stew about that.
Most.
You guys will get along great.
It'll still be called chili by just about anybody. But technically, speaking as somebody who blogs about cooking, it's not chili with beans in it.
It seems strange.
Don't ask. I don't have the reason for you.
I was brought up on beans.
I always had beans.
So you were eating a lot of stew then?
I guess.
you weren't aware.
Like I said, it was brought up the same way. It always had kidney beans when my parents made it.
So regardless of what else the dish has in it, add beans, it's now a stew.
Are you Googling this, Sarah?
Chili history. When it comes to the story of chili, tales and myths abound.
Oh, boy.
Oh, my.
Chili Mythbusters. Welcome to the podcast.
Mexicans are said to deny any association with chili.
Why? It's not a bad thing. What's chili done to anyone? Except for give Brian the shit.
Yeah.
It's understandable.
I'm sorry. This is a fun fact, and you just have to know it. It says, enthusiasts of chili say one possible, though far-fetched, starting point comes from Sister Mary of Agreda, a Spanish nun in the early 1600s who never left her convent, yet had out-of-body experiences in which her spirit was transported across the Atlantic to preach Christianity to the Indians. After one of the return trips, her spirit wrote down the first recipe for chili con carne.
It's a godsend.
Which has no beans. Chili peppers,
Wow.
venison, onions, and tomatoes.
So it's God that hates the beans.
Or the Indians that
Blasphemy.
she spoke to in her dreams.
This chili is blasphemous.
She went and talked to them. They gave her some of the local fare, and then she had a vision that someone told her the recipe for chili.
I feel like she ate a lot of
Connect the
mushrooms
dots.
and
Yes.
maybe got the wrong ones.
Or the right ones. The right
It says
ones.
Lyndon B. Johnson was a big chili lover.
Thank you, sister. Wow.
All right.
It's chili history, you know.
If
I
it's
would
on
have
the
Gerald
internet.
Ford if they were going to bring something like that up.
It's
I
on
would
the
have guessed
internet, it's
Gerald
true.
Ford was
Yeah.
a big chili guy, but
Who, Gerald Ford?
yeah, she said Lyndon Johnson. So if I was going to guess a president that was going to be into
Well-
chili, I would have went Ford.
Yeah.
Seems the most chili type of.
Because he says chili concocted outside of Texas is a weak, apologetic imitation of the real thing.
Fuck you, Texas.
Wow.
All right, so there you go.
The gauntlet has
Open
been thrown.
challenge from me to people in Texas. Go ahead. Try my chili. Come up to Pennsylvania and try some chili of me.
Chili of me.
That sounds
Not
wrong.
not that you ever do, but
I think you're gonna
if we
get the
started
wrong kind
titling
to take
episodes,
The chili of me.
the chili of me, yeah.
Take it to the crust, Mike.
Mike, is
Yeah,
that
take
what's
it
in
to the
the
crust.
chili we're eating today?
Take it to the crust.
I did.
And the
I
chili
did
of
make
me.
homemade croutons for it, so we're taking it to the crust.
You think you just found the title of your memoir too?
The chili of me.
The Mike Bradley story.
You know what? If I ever write a memoir, remind me of that because I will forget. But
Writing
to
that
write it,
time
just
code
make a
down
book
because that's
cover.
going to be the intro. Chili of me.
the chili of me.
I just thought of Kevin dropping the chili of the oven.
I was so worried about that. I had duct tape over the top of the
what I
thing, and it was like, no, I'm not
Yeah,
having that
Sarah
happen.
doesn't know yet.
No way.
So yeah, the cover of the book
It's just
is
Kevin
Mike's big frickin' crock pot of chili just on the floor. Hello and welcome to another episode of Brian Guy Super Friends. I'm your host, Brian Labick. Joining me for this episode, we're going to go around the room. Andy Stoles,
What's up, podcast people?
Josh Zorich,
Mr. Movie Slut.
Leslie Oders,
Hi.
Mike Bradley,
Hello.
and Sarah Zorich.
My husband confuses me.
If you listened to the show more regularly, you would know.
It's still, that was not what I thought was going to come out of your mouth.
That can be the title of your book.
It's gonna be the podcast where we just bring out titles of everyone's autobiography.
I want to change mine.
You don't get to choose.
You bring it on yourself.
It chooses you.
Mike, I hope you're good for that intro because we made very clear where you're going to end up in that order. I did not catch you off guard on this one.
No, I was not caught off guard. I'm usually caught off guard. He tries to fuck with me on when he's going to intro me.
Apparently, I get him mixed up every fucking time.
Oh, I see.
Well, yeah,
And he
I
blames
try
it
to,
on never knowing which order he'll be going in.
Yeah,
but
because at
this is pretty
first
evident.
he would always announce me last because I was like newest to the show, so I would always be last, and I could fuck with people in my intro because I could plan something out. And then he started mixing it up when I started fucking around a little bit, and then now I don't know where it's going to happen. It's like being in timeout. But,
I like that. Mike, you had something to tease?
yeah. So, Miss Marvel here, we're going to talk about that and everything. But first, coming up, we're going to have a few episodes focused solely on the MCU to kind of lead us into Endgame.
Now, that would be the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Is that correct, Michael?
Just say yes. Yes, that is correct. Yes.
Welcome to my life.
So, in one of these episodes, we are going to have another episode of Bry Guy and his Super Friends Jeopardy. For that today, I am going to reveal the categories because it's going to be all MCU, guys.
Oh, this is great because we forgot all of them in advance that he told us before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
150,
and
so-
this time I don't want anybody.
This time we can
like,
forget again.
I'm telling everybody now, but I don't want you going and like studying or something. That kind of ruins the fucking fun. But it'd be better if you guys could do better than last time, honestly.
I'm telling you not to study, but you should probably study.
Remain stupid.
So I'll give a brief explanation of what I mean with each of these. So I have three categories that are going to be repeated. Once in single Jeopardy and then back again in double Jeopardy this time. It is the MCU. There's not as many categories to go with. So we have soundtracks. There's going to be a 1 and 2. This is basically, we're just going to take the name of a song on an actual orchestral soundtrack from one of the movies, and you will have to tell us which movie it is from. Some of these may be
Sarah's
easy,
intrigued.
some of them may be more difficult, but it should be a fun category. I had fun making it up and picking which tracks to go with, so hopefully you guys will have fun with it too. Then we're going to have 2 categories of specific cameos, not Stan Lee cameos, which is also a category. But these are non-Stan Lee cameos. In Single Jeopardy, you'll be doing non-Stan Lee cameos from Iron Man movies. And in Double Jeopardy, you will be doing non-Stan Lee cameos from Guardians of the Galaxy movies. There is enough of both to make whole categories. Then we have the Stan Lee cameos, as I said.
Is that going to be limited just to the MCU or any like a Marvel movie?
MCU.
That's
This is all about the MCU. So yeah, I kept it relegated. Then a category from last time, the only one returning is "Don't Look at Me." You said it for a single Jeopardy and double Jeopardy round there. That is our quotes category. Following there, we have post-credit scenes, which should be fairly obvious what that's going to focus on. We have Family Matters, which is going to be concerned mostly with the characters we've met and family relations. We're going to have a category based entirely on the Infinity Stones. We are going to have a category called Hail Hydra. Can anybody give me a Hail Hydra?
Hail Hydra.
I knew somebody
That's the
would
wrong
do it.
salute.
Yeah, I don't think Brian gave the correct salute for Hydra right
Just went
there.
German. Complete German.
It's both fists up in the air.
That's
it's
it.
not the Nazi
I have to hold
salute.
a microphone.
And the final category is, as always with Jeopardy, potpourri, which you have to include if you're going to do a Jeopardy thing. Potpourri, just general questions, some fun, interesting ones there. So, now that you know these categories ahead of time, I do expect a better performance this time because I was.
I think it's more fun if we suck, honestly.
We're allowed to study.
We're allowed to. Are you going to study?
I'm not big on that show. Are you kidding?
Hey,
Silence.
if I have to do it, you have to do it.
No one said you have to do
I
it.
know. Good. I know.
I was wondering when that was established.
I like how that I took that
Because
seriously. I'm like,
normally
oh, wait, I, didn't
I
even
get
have to.
guilted. I have a slightly better chance though this time because there aren't video
That's what
game
we figured.
categories.
Yeah, you'd
to
feel
throw
more
me off.
comfortable with this
Yeah, no,
one.
this is purely MCU. This I didn't try. Like last time it was all over the damn place. It was just general trivia, and honestly, nobody except Josh really did very well at all.
I think everyone else did. I think I was fast on the trigger. I don't think it was
Is it
the-
Ken Ham?
Yeah.
That's a Jeopardy.
Yeah. And we can't hold. We can't really include Ian's average, but
No, Ian. Sorry, Ian, if you listen to this, I'm sure you won't. But Ian did not take it seriously at all.
It's a story for him on this podcast.
that's the title of his book. He did not take it seriously.
Oh, we're titling his book without him here.
And he'll never know because he doesn't listen.
So hopefully this time we can do a bit better. We do have other shows planned. I don't know, Brian. Do you want to explain those? Do you want me to?
I mean, other than just teasing, we're going to try to do, I think, 3 MCU themed shows. I can't remember now. I can't remember if this counts as one of them or not. If we
No,
counted
this
Captain
wasn't
Marvel,
one.
okay, yeah.
No, we have the Jeopardy episode. We have the clip show, and we had a third one planned.
Lists. We're going to do lists.
Yeah, our favorite and least favorite lists kind of thing.
Yeah, so we're going to try to divide that into 3 shows between now and Endgame. Hopefully we can get them out before then. So I hope you like MCU stuff because that's all you're going to get for the month of March and April.
We've been waiting 10 years for this, Endgame, so I think it's well suited.
Yeah.
It's a good combination.
Yeah,
Combination.
figured good way to wrap it up. Look
As
forward
soon as
to
I
what's
said, I was
coming.
thinking the same thing.
All right, so as Mike said, we're going to talk about Captain Marvel on this episode, which is why one of the main reasons I want to get Sarah and Leslie here to have some representation for female superheroes. It's really not as fun. Yeah, see? Super friends, superheroes, that's why you're on the show. Because otherwise it's just 4 white guys talking about Captain Marvel, which isn't...
Talking about a white lady.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So if you haven't listened to our movie reviews in the past, what we try to do is generally talk about the movie spoiler-free at the top of the show, try to give you an idea how the movie is, presumably before you see it. There will be a very clear spoiler warning before we get into specifics, and we'll dive into all the spoilery goodness. So I figured just to sort of start it off and see if we're on the same page, but I'm sure most of you are. But is everyone caught up on previous MCU movies? I'm looking at you. I didn't know if you've watched them all or not.
Hey.
Just checking. I know you miss a lot of stuff in theater, so I don't know if you've caught them all later or...
I believe I am all caught up.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I missed any.
He had 9
There-
months or so to catch up on Ant-Man and the Wasp. So
Yeah.
that's enough time. It's,
'Cause
I,
this
think
is
it's on
I did
Netflix
just recently
already.
watch that one. So.
Okay. All right, yeah, that was to be the last one after Infinity War, between that one and this one. So
Which
okay.
one?
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Huh?
That son of a bitch. Everybody else is, right? Everybody's good?
Indeed.
Yes. Okay. So the only thing, one of the main questions I was going to ask, because Josh had mentioned he had someone at work that had this was their first MCU experience, was seeing Captain Marvel. So then that got me thinking, do you think there's any required viewings for Captain Marvel before this, or can you go into Captain Marvel as the first one and be fine?
So yeah, I told her that at first. That like, hey, just in case you find that they might be making references that you're not getting, like aside from the actual material, if it seems like there is like a callback or an in-joke related to some other storyline, even, don't worry. There's a lot of other things tied to this, and and she actually got to see it before I did. But I think after I did, I honestly think you could go in cold. I think there's a lot that this helps give connective tissue to,
Yeah.
but you don't need a ton of background from the other 20 movies. Like, you're not going to be lost. You're not going to be like, there's certain significance to seeing characters appear from the past and whatnot. But in terms of storyline, there's really not.
I feel like I want to come back to this after we get past spoilers.
Okay.
Because I feel like I can make an argument that maybe you do need to see at least a couple others, but not without spoiling some things and explaining why. So I will table that for later.
Well, I'll say at the very least, she didn't, like, when she came in the next day, she didn't seem like, well, that story didn't make sense. I was lost. What did that mean? Et cetera, et cetera. Right. So at least that was her experience.
I think that knowing the references and knowing the things that you see in the movie from past movies, I think that just enriched our experience. I don't think it's necessarily something that that somebody that's coming to this as their first Marvel movie needs to, or really would need. That makes sense.
Andy,
I feel like it could be a standalone movie for sure. I mean, like she said, it definitely, helps to know a lot of the references, but you don't need to know them.
Yeah, because I felt like the more I thought about it, it was like being just timeline-wise, taking place in the 90s, it already sets itself apart from mostly every other MCU movie out there and kind of takes place in its own little pocket. So, yeah, I think you probably could see it and be your first one. I don't know, Sarah?
No, I agree. I think this could be your first one, and you might not get as much out of it, but I think the general storyline, and you'd still be happy.
Yeah.
I wonder if any part of that was deliberate or not, that it is the first fully female-led character in the front of the movie, and if they potentially anticipated bringing in some new crowd in the 21st chapter, you should tread lightly and be careful about new viewers being completely lost.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. They expect people to come to this as their first movie.
Potentially.
I would say that maybe it just happened that way. I don't necessarily think it was intent, because I'd say there's
Feige thought about this. This is all part of the plan.
There's other Marvel films that you could go into blind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And be just fine. Like the first Guardians, you need no context whatsoever to enjoy that movie. It doesn't even reference itself back to the rest of the MCU in that movie.
I think everyone they're trying to attract a different crowd for. I think Guardians had a specific crowd it was aimed for. Black Panther had a specific crowd it was aimed for. Captain Marvel had a specific crowd it was aimed for. Each one, I think you could go into clean and be fine.
In some cases,
yeah. I think I guess Black Panther did explain what happened in Civil War well enough at the start of it.
Right. Which they don't even reference much more during the course of the movie anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Right, what I'm saying, like, just understanding, like, the previous events that led to him in that scenario, but we're not here to talk about that. But in general, I was saying, just I think there's other movies, maybe it just happens to be that some of these origin story movies only have that little bit of connective tissue to the overall story. I think that's just kind of how they go.
It could be, yeah.
Because, you want to focus on that character. And I don't think that's because she's a woman they did it that way. I think it just happened that way.
I mean, Marvel's proved they can do an origin story, so this is just more for the formula that they've established since Iron Man.
Yeah, right, and that's what I mean. Is it fits that formula, and that formula happens to be on its own fairly well in most cases.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is like jumping ahead or anything, but I was pleasantly surprised that this was not a boring origin story like we're used to seeing. It kind of broke the formula, in my opinion, a bit.
Well, define boring origin story compared to this one.
You start with the character as is. You show a few events of their life. You get to the catalyst event that gives them either their motivation and or powers or abilities. At some point, maybe during that time, the antagonist is introduced and the conflict is presented, and then slowly they have to come to realize their strengths and face the villain.
See, I feel like
that sounds like an awesome movie.
What you described, I feel like is Captain Marvel. I checked a lot of those boxes,
but not as in the direct. It's not that it didn't check the boxes. It's that it didn't just rely on going chronologically.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
and it wasn't. I also appreciated that it didn't just rely on, like 20-minute flashback segments at a time.
Yeah.
To give you the exposition. It interwove sort of a mental mystery to answer the questions while giving you the exposition you needed.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. All right, so why don't we just talk generally what you thought about the movie? Any volunteers, or are we just going to go around in a circle?
Do the circle.
Or
go ahead first. We can start the circle wherever. Whoever talks first, start the circle.
Don't point at me.
I thought you had something to say. That's why I was pointing.
I liked it.
That's a good general thought of the movie.
It's going on the poster. I liked it, Leslie.
Leslie's review.
2 thumbs up.
Do you want to elaborate any more generally about that? That's Sarah's quote for the poster.
What did we say earlier? As far as like,
we developed a rating scale.
Okay.
and this one was
This one was a Spice Girls platform boot kick to the nuts. That's what we decided.
yeah.
Now I want to know your other ratings in that scale.
I was going to say,
Hashtag girl power.
so does that like equate to a 7, or is that
that's
a 3?
that's a 10.
Have you ever had
see,
a
I was
Spice
hoping-
Girls platform kick to the nuts?
I mean,
No, but I was
Sure, we
hoping
could arrange
that
that for you, Mike.
I would say-
so that I could see what else you guys could come up with.
every other female though, when we said that is our age, automatically knows what level that is.
That's fair.
It felt good.
They're woman-splaining things to us.
How's it feel?
All right. It's about time. Go ahead.
It's due process, yeah.
So
Put us
where
in our
does, like
place.
a
Go for
Britney
it.
Fembot thing fall? Because that's the only
No.
that's
No.
not like a 1.
She's like a 0.
Oh, well, that's why I was wondering. Like, that's the only other thing I could come up with off the top of my head. But
A man would come up with a fembot.
exactly, that's why it's a 1, because that's what a man would think of. It actually came to my head because you were talking about the stupid Britney Spears microphone earlier.
That's true. I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Anything else from you, or else we'll...
I don't know how to say things without spoiling stuff. Like, I have specific opinions
Okay.
about certain things, and I'm like...
Yeah, we're fairly hamstrung for the start
Yeah.
of the discussion, but we
So-
want people that just want to feel,
Yeah.
on...
So I really liked it, and it just felt like a good superhero movie. It was, to me, it didn't feel like a good female superhero story. Like, it just felt like, she was who she was, and it wasn't, it didn't matter that she was a woman. Does that make sense to anybody?
Were you disappointed that it didn't have more of that push,
No.
or is
No.
that
Which
more
is-
of what it's supposed to be?
That's what it's supposed to be.
That's what the representation
I
is
was saying
supposed
that-
to
yeah.
show.
It wasn't like she's kick ass for a girl. Like, wow, we're shocked. Wow, this girl's awesome. No, it was just like, she is. And that's what I appreciate about it. Because, I mean, we felt good after Wonder Woman, which I know is not part of this, but, that was our first female, like, superhero movie
Yeah.
we could have. You felt good, but, like, during that whole movie, you were still getting, like, oh, my gosh, this girl, she's really doing great things. Holy crap, it's a woman. Oh, my God. And this one, it just was...
Do you think though, because this is the second one, they had more freedom in the sense of that maybe that mindset wasn't automatically there because it wasn't the first one, even though
Possibly.
it's first one in MCU, but not the first one. Like Wonder Woman kind of opened the door.
I
for
think
some
too,
stuff.
like the timing of the movie, the actual era that it's set into, kind of played a part in it.
They also released it on International Women's Day, which was
I know that was
a
also
good point.
amazing.
Yeah, smart
That was
move.
really great.
I would argue that for Wonder Woman, at least, it feels that way because of the universe she exists in,
Yeah,
where you're in this universe with Superman, with Green Lantern, with all these incredibly overpowered characters, and you add one that's a woman, and it's just like, well, okay, she's there, but how is she comparing power-wise to what's around her? Whereas Captain Marvel, you put her into a universe where she is the most powerful superhero you've experienced in the Marvel universe, and then that's actually a big difference as opposed to Wonder Woman coming in somewhere in the middle of the pack and not, just in how they're presented.
yeah,
I think part of it too was Wonder Woman was set even the time period it's set in. They almost had to address there was going to be that she's a woman no matter what you did just because of the time.
Yeah.
Not saying that the 90s had it too, but that it's a very different.
Yeah.
Well, the 80 years between the setting makes a difference.
Well, and
like
also,
Wonder Woman,
like the specific context too. She's thrown in the middle of World War I when women weren't allowed to be soldiers
vote
in armies in the U.S. vote.
So
they weren't allowed to be fighter pilots. She's going to be the fish out of water for multiple reasons,
right?
And she's going to be the standout. So yeah, maybe it was impossible to ignore that contrast entirely.
Right. Well, yeah, and the things were far from perfect for women in the 90s, but they were really far from perfect for women in the teens. Yeah. So,
but I think it was just nice to see a movie where it wasn't like you didn't have to explain to everyone that she's powerful and she's a woman too. Like it wasn't a theme. It didn't feel like a theme throughout. I didn't feel like it was mentioned constantly to where there wasn't this shock. She just was powerful, and that's the lack of.
There was only that one moment toward, and I don't think it's much of a spoiler. It's just a comment on a thing that happens. There in one of the first kind of flashbacky trips that she has that they show, the one other douchey fighter pilot on her team making the cockpit joke. That was really the only moment you even got a real straight sort of gender comparison put out on the table.
I feel like they made a few choices to not contextually in the story make things about her being a woman, as opposed to they address things in their own way, which we'll talk about later without spoiling anything now, that go much better. It goes over a lot better, in my opinion, that way than having it be like Leslie said, she's powerful for a girl. Yeah. Instead of doing it that way, I think the way that they put the girl power into it is much better than making a point of that.
Yeah.
Mike, you've been chiming in, but generally, what do you like it? Didn't like it?
I have issues with some of it, but for the most part, I enjoyed the experience. I thought the movie was a lot of fun. Some of the issues I have are more personal, not really. I think the plot's fine. The soundtrack, with everything you have to work from in the 90s, I felt really let down by. Just because there's just so much to work with, and I feel like it didn't suit my taste.
I'm with you on that. I think it was. I feel like they tried to make a soundtrack that feels like watching Guardians, but the 90s.
And they failed.
And whenever they play a song, it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that song. It doesn't have the impact like I felt Guardians did with song selection.
Except for one.
I actually read an article that said they purposefully didn't base it on Guardians.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So they're supposed to be just like, hey, remember this 90s song?
It's not supposed to be because, from what I remember, Guardians, Gunn, did it with certain songs in mind for scenes.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't build the movie that way. They didn't build Captain Marvel that way. So they weren't necessarily building a scene around a song. And they weren't mining songs that people hadn't thought about in so long. Okay. I think, too, but you also just think of decades.
Yeah.
Most people, I think, that would be our age, or the quote-unquote maybe typical MCU, what they're appealing for, probably know the 90s better than the music that's coming out of the 70s, especially the ones that they chose.
Yeah.
So I think it was a different reasoning behind. They weren't trying to make that compilation and have everything meld completely.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's fair.
I can agree with that, but at the same time, I would say maybe this is, again, a personal thing, but I look at this next to a movie like Ready Player One that focuses more on the 80s, and this entire time watching the movie, instead of feeling like, man, the 90s were cool, it was kind of like, God, the 90s sucked.
but also, wasn't it? It's set in 95, so you only have half of the decade to work with.
True.
Yeah,
if they're trying to
looking at the back end of the 90s, I'm kind of happy they steered away from that.
And this is coming from the '90s guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think there's part of it where too, like Ready Player One you could pull from anything out of there, where they were more confined by what
they were. I don't know. Like it again. Is mentioning a specific song spoiler?
I don't think so.
Okay, so "Come As You Are" plays in Miss Marvel, and it felt completely out of context for the scene it was in, for the tone of the song to the tone of the scene.
See, I completely disagree.
The words in the song fit the scene, but the tone of the song and the way it was like intended originally.
I'm with Mike on this.
It doesn't fit that scene. It
Like,
was not meant.
They
to
used that
be
same
literally
song
what it
to
said.
promote the Defenders, which worked really
that.
well for that tone.
Where it's kind of a rearrangement a little bit. Okay.
Come As You Are is a very dark, it's not a happy song.
No.
And they put it in like almost like a coming of age moment that it didn't. It felt like the wrong. Like, I love the song, I love the scene. I just didn't love the combining of the two.
Okay.
Maybe part of it was that because they wanted to grab some more recognizable, iconic songs from the decade that, for context, I have a coworker who is 24 years old. Literally earlier this week, like before the release of the movie, just coincidentally, we brought up Gwen Stefani and No Doubt for some reason. I don't remember why. She only knows the name Gwen Stefani because of the connection to Blake Shelton. She doesn't even know her as a solo artist.
There's so many teenagers that have no idea No Doubt
have no idea who No Doubt is. Never heard the name.
That's B-A-N-A.
So I can almost appreciate maybe a little
Then
bit of the
how
film.
does she have fans? If they don't know her from No Doubt, if she hadn't been in No Doubt,
She was on The Voice.
Yeah, she's
She
been
was
on
a
the
host
Oh
of
no,
The
no,
Voice.
I know that.
And then she did
I'm saying,
solo work
Yeah.
that like maybe people who are a little bit older than my coworker would have grabbed her from. But like point being, I think maybe the filmmakers looked for like, look, this is the one chance we might get to make a 90s centric set movie, especially in this whole fabric universe. Let's throw a couple. I mean, thank God. As much as I love it, I'm glad if they're going to go with Nirvana, I'm glad they didn't use Teen Spirit. I'm glad there's a couple songs that they didn't choose to use just for the iconography of it. But I think because they maybe weren't approaching it with more of an organic fabric in mind, it did maybe seem that the juxtaposition of the two was like, oh, look, here's one opportunity out of like the 4 or 5 we're going to use throughout the movie where we can put something in. And it just didn't maybe seem to mesh as well.
I know what you mean by it. Like, it almost looked like they shot the scene and then tried to pick a song to put in it. Because there's a part in it where, like, the movement and stuff of the one character, I'm like, what?
Well,
I understand what you're saying.
It just... There's much, I think, better songs they could have chose in that specific instance. Like, where they used No Doubt, I thought that was awesome. That was well used. It was perfect for what they used it for. And that was actually, like, the one time in the movie I thought, like, holy crap, they nailed it for that idea with the soundtrack. And a lot of the other times, the songs felt out of place for where they were. And maybe Come As You Are goes better in a different scene. Maybe a different song for that scene goes better. Maybe the person who chose the song just chose the lyrics and didn't understand the tone of the song. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd have to research more into who made those decisions. I
But
don't have
I
that,
actually
but-
agree with Brian. If this is where you were going with it, that sort of reorchestrated version, that rearranged version that they'd used to promote the Defenders,
Yeah.
I have to look this up.
at
I
that
don't remember
slower tempo with a little bit of the guitar pulled back, as much as that riff drives that song, there was something about how they reapproached that song for the Defenders that if they were going to use it, if they were like set on using it for, lyric reasons or theme reasons, that arrangement might have actually worked better for the pacing of that scene than the original.
When did that arrangement come out, though?
Like 2 years ago when they were
Yeah, they wouldn't
like,
be able
when
to
they-
use it for a 95 movie.
True. If you're going to get really anachronistic about it, sure.
That was the only version of that song for its time. Maybe some off
True.
band covers or something.
Yeah. But I mean, it was like someone did a different arrangement on the original, so it's still like Kurt's vocals. It's not a cover version or anything. And I don't know if they were going to get in the weeds that much about
See,
it. But that's a fair point.
I don't think the arrangement's the problem. I think it's the tone of that song for that scene. Works for Defenders. Like
Okay.
they're the gritty, grungy type of tone for that show, which the grungy music doesn't fit the tone of Captain Marvel's movie.
Okay.
I think it's a lot more fun and poppy.
She also
Like if
wears
they
a
use
Nine Inch
90s,
Nails shirt throughout the whole movie, and
Yeah.
I don't hear Trent one time in the movie, and it kind of
Like, I don't know why they went-
Oh, they're going to do that, but it's Disney, and I'm like, it's Disney.
I don't know why they went 90s rock and grunge. I feel like 90s pop would have fit the tone of Captain Marvel better.
What kind of?
I think the time.
I don't
the
know,
time
but-
space up to 95. You're talking
you
grunge
don't-
was pop.
I
Yeah, you
think
don't have-
I think from the '90s, if you either go like
That would be rapper
late,
pop.
like
You'd
late
have New
'80s,
Kids
early
on the Block.
'90s hip hop, colorful, Fresh Prince style,
And
or,
or see,
grunge.
so I'm
or
not thinking it
goth.
through enough to be able to be like, yeah, okay,
There's
that
really-
would work, that would work. But I don't know. There's
Michael Jackson was still making songs and still was the king of pop, but it wasn't.
Right. It
Wasn't the culture of the time.
yeah.
I think if
Especially
someone,
not
if someone
of a
had
white
to quickly
woman. It
pull
wouldn't-
out
what he was making was not going to.
a
Early
I'm sorry.
'90s, he had started wading into more some of his socially conscious.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, I think just for a fashion vibe, or if you tell somebody, tell me what the '60s looked like, tie dye and hippies
That's true.
could be one of the first things that comes to people's mind. Tell me about the '90s.
Yeah, grunge. Yeah, it came from the '90s.
It's
so
going
I
to be
get that.
one of the first three.
Yeah, the
and if
grunge
you say
or the
like
cross color.
culturally or fashion wise, what were the things that could represent it? That's going to be so. I don't know what else they would have pulled from.
Yeah, and
if
I don't
they
have
were
an
going
alternative
back.
suggestion to be like, use this instead.
Even
but
in the end, she's wearing a shirt. She's wearing a heart shirt. I don't remember hearing heart.
They did it in the flashbacks.
There was a heart song.
There was a heart song. I can't remember
From
it right
maybe
now.
when she was
Jukebox
it,
hit.
it was
in the bar.
It's off the Dreamboat Annie album because I have it. It'll come back to me. It's in one of her childhood. It shows. It's part of the flashback when they show her younger because that would have been heart. I mean, they had 80s success, but they were back in the 70s as well. So when she was little, she would have started with the Dreamboat Annie and gone into the 80s. And so there is one in Magic Man. There we go.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
I just had to talk it out to get it out of my brain.
yeah. Remove other things.
Andy's been eerily quiet. I want to get him in here. Soundtracking. What do you think of the soundtracks?
I don't think it stood out to me, but I also don't think it warped my perception of anything. Like I wasn't like, no, geez, it just irks me that they use that song in that instance. It didn't
Didn't pull you out of it or
no,
anything?
It didn't pull me out of anything. I thought it did a good job of keeping that time frame in mind, and all those songs. I didn't really have a lot of personal like, oh my god, this song is great, but I was like, oh man, that seemed to fit, and that seemed to fit. It didn't necessarily pop like Guardians of the Galaxy, but that was like she said, made to be like that. Like, but I felt it, chugged right along and didn't stick out.
Okay.
Didn't detract.
Do you also think it also could have been, even though they weren't pushing gender as much, like you said, Leslie, where it wasn't like she's strong for a girl, but thinking about her age and how she would have grown up and how I'm thinking about my musical progression from the time I was a kid into a teenager into a young woman, where you could cross over into. So do you think that has any of like the way you're thinking of it? Is there a gendered look at it, even like unconsciously?
Yeah, maybe.
Of how like what she would have maybe been listening to versus what as a teenage girl into a young woman as to what a teenage boy would have listened. Like there was crossover.
Yeah.
But in how you view those songs too.
I don't know.
I think the only ones they used though would have been crossover songs. Like the ones that were like.
Were you a huge TLC fan?
Actually, at the time I was into that song, I was.
They did play Waterfalls, and I didn't see
Yeah.
one fucking
Oh,
waterfall.
that's right. That's
Which
right.
also would have been.
You were so
I'm just thinking,
bad.
like when I was growing up, there were no boys that I knew that liked that song.
Oh, I don't know. I had no problem. I was 11 years old when that song came out, or so. So
I mean, most
mean,
were either indifferent.
yeah, I was going to say,
or, yeah.
but I'd say like the crossover things I'm referring to are like Hole was there, Garbage was there.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love the garbage.
That was a good
song.
use of garbage.
Yeah,
Although
I
Hole
will
was the
say.
only anachronistic one, correct?
but that was at the end.
As far as I
Yeah.
can tell.
It
Yeah.
was like
Which
yeah.
which garbage song was it?
Only happy when it
Happy
rains.
Oh yeah, that is a very good one.
Yeah.
I was really
but
excited
those
about
were there.
that.
But I think they. I'd argue Waterfalls was a crossover. That was pure pop culture. 100%.
I'm not saying it wasn't pop
Everybody knows
culture.
that song and still bobs their head a little bit.
Everybody knows it. I'm just saying, like the feeling you attach to it might be different coming from.
That's the shoulder thing. That's what they do in the video.
Got by my
I don't
lip
know.
when I do it.
I mean, Waterfalls was about disease. I mean, it was.
Everybody loves disease.
No, I'm saying, like, I don't feel like Waterfalls means
It's
anymore
very
to a
apropos for
woman
the
or
last
a
couple
man
weeks,
because
Mike.
it's
Have
all
you been
about-
following the
It's all
news?
about like the whole AIDS culture at the time. It was
Right.
It was more about that than.
It's
anything
also
else.
like TLC was one of the only entirely
Ab-
female with a female rapper hip hop into R&B. Like I'm
Absolutely.
just looking at it from a music history perspective.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm saying that song transcends it.
Yeah.
The rest of TLC maybe doesn't, but that song I would say transcends that, and I'd say the same thing about Hole and Garbage and everything that they did use. Even I'm Just a Girl, when they used that was.
I'm not saying it doesn't transcend at all. I'm just saying if you look at it from a different gender perspective.
That was our jam.
And I think it can mean
Those were our
something
jams.
differently to a girl than to a guy, even if it's a crossover pop hit. Just like a lot of crossover hits,
Sure.
people from different cultures view it differently. People from different
Well,
races view it differently.
right.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying
Okay.
guys couldn't like it. I'm just saying I think maybe women might attach a certain, maybe not even lyrically, but just a certain meaning to the popularity of that song, the popularity of the group, what they achieved, what they were standing for.
Okay.
I am remembering these songs as we're talking about them, so apparently, like, they didn't stick in my memory from seeing the movie. I remember being excited when they came on, like, yeah, but
They had Desiree in there too, and that made me really excited.
They did.
Did anyone
So
else?
remember there are some more 90s pop in there than I thought, and just not
There's-
rock and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
There's
Like,
a
I'm
few.
forgetting a lot of it, so
Yeah.
But I
Bringing
think
it
the
up.
other thing when you think of pop music, the term itself is problematic because it's popular. So what we think of pop music today is different. Like the term pop has evolved. So, if you were thinking like pop, I think a lot of times we think like boy band,
Right,
or
right.
that
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of thing. But. And like I don't, but I think if they would have thrown like New Kids on the Block, early '90s New Kids,
Yeah,
on the
because
Block in there,
I don't know if that would
but
fit either.
by '95 they weren't in there.
It would not.
But neither was I'm Just a Girl though. That was post 95.
No, that was '95.
I was
Really?
trying
Tragic
to
Kingdom.
really nail some things down after seeing this. So I actually
felt
looked
like
up
that was later than
both.
that.
So of a few things specifically referenced in the movie, there were album posters up by the phone, the payphone she was using
Yeah.
for Smashing Pumpkins, Melancholy, and Infinite Sadness. They played just a Girl from Tragic Kingdom. The Stan Lee cameo in the movie is in reference to a movie that was released in it. So all three of those, at least, were all specifically released in either September or October of 1995.
Really?
Yes.
It's good work
So
for him
just
on that.
just about everything, and like I said, the only the closing credit song "Hole" was technically it was 1998, but everything before that was at least very centered to 95 or at least earlier. But actually, the one last thing I'll say about the music is it just occurred to me, it actually doesn't make sense that "Come As You Are" would play in the particular scene that it does for her, because she's not on Earth when that was around. She's not aware of that, and and the difference is it's not that it was a choice to put that music over the movie.
That's actually
It is
true.
in her subconscious, in that conversation, that music is being put on. She doesn't know what that is.
That's a really good
That's a
point.
good point,
She
and
left-
because they have
she
it's
left
the
Earth
record
in the
player.
gap.
Yeah.
So it makes you
That
think
album-
that music is playing. It's
that
not
album,
just an
yeah,
overdub of
was
music that we're
91. I think
hearing
the
that
single was
she's
92.
hearing.
Well, this is what's kind of helping me get over the whole soundtrack
I didn't
choices
think of
thing.
that.
I don't think it fits the tone of the movie, but if something Sarah said where it would be like her personality, like that's her music choice, not the tone of the movie or the sign of the times. That would be Carol Danvers' music choice for that era. So if it's just her in that era, that's what she may, whether she listened to it or not, that's just what her character likes, the style of music. So that's why those songs are picked through the movie.
Sure.
So whether or not it was out when she heard it or not, that's my
They
explanation
still
for
could
why.
have thrown back to Pearl Jam for something pre-'89.
Right, and like I said, it was only that's the only scene in which deliberate subconscious choice of her own character was made, as opposed to music being played over a loudspeaker at a strip mall
think about it
or
that
just
way.
laid over the soundtrack.
And are we supposed
It's
to assume
literally-
that, like... No, I feel like it's spoiled, so I'm not gonna...
Save it.
Yeah, I
We're
was going
almo-
to
we're
try
almost
and
there.
word it without spoiling, and then I just was like, can't do it.
We've talked like 20 minutes about a soundtrack already.
Yeah.
We haven't really even talked about the movie.
Hey, the
good
music
point.
history major is really excited about that.
Well, Sarah, I want to get back to
Focused on
you.
popular music.
So, since we've sort of been going around, just general thoughts of the movie.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I kind of had a similar feeling to Wonder Woman of just this kind of euphoric empowerment feel, just overall general feeling afterward. And yeah, I was very pleased with it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I did enjoy it as well. I mean, we touched on some of the soundtrack stuff. That kind of bugged me a little bit. There was a song choice in particular, which we can get into in the spoiler stuff, that for me felt a little heavy-handed, and I think we've mentioned the song choice already, but to just me, personal opinion, didn't sit as well with me. There are some timeliney things that I think we can get into for spoilers that I want to go over, and maybe someone can convince me how that works. All the surprises that I want to touch on are all spoilery, so we'll save those. But yeah, I did enjoy it. Andy?
I also thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was an exciting movie. I really liked how chronologically, like I believe it was Josh mentioned, that it sort of sparses the past, future, current thing very well, and I thought that played well to how the movie sort of ran as you watched it. And I had a smile on my face when I left that. I was like, that was fun. I might actually see this again.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see a movie twice in the theater?
Well, he didn't say
I'm
the
just
theater.
jazzed I
He
saw
just said watch it again.
I saw 2 movies this month, man.
That was your New Year's resolution, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or it should be.
He said he just
I
said
did
2
that, like,
movies
2
this
years
month,
ago.
and it's only March 9th.
I
Right.
know.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Keep that trend going.
You all should be too.
I am very impressed.
Josh, I just noticed the shirt you're wearing. Is that deliberate?
Quasi.
He's wearing a Smashing Pumpkins shirt.
Josh, general thoughts?
Yeah, very positive. Again, I did the point Andy just made again. Like, I did appreciate the different approach to the storytelling. There's something about non-linear narratives that are a good way to, I think, keep the audience interested, shake things up, and in this case, it was effective too. Like, I think one of the best examples I've seen of the use of that in a long, long time is actually Deadpool. Deadpool goes back and forth so many times,
Yeah.
where you almost, to like the extent that you almost forget you're in a flashback. That, oh yeah, the rest of this movie is like 6 months from the point I'm looking at now, but I've been watching this part for like 10 minutes.
First, like 2/3 of that movie technically takes place on a freeway.
Yeah,
The bridge, yeah.
yeah. So, like, looking at all that, it's I would imagine a more challenging way to write and to keep everything focused and to make sure that you're not overusing it and it's being applied effectively and correctly. So just the approach to the storytelling, I was happy about. The effects were great as always. There were some character and role surprises that came out of left field that I didn't see coming. I think that was just based off assumptions I made about casting. But I appreciated being surprised again. And this was again, me. I hadn't seen one freaking thing about this movie.
I was going to bring that up.
Didn't know one image. Had no impression of anything, and no, it was a good time.
Cool beans.
And the one thing I will add to the timeline, the chronological thing, is I hate it when movies tease something and then never explain it down the road. And I think the things that Captain Marvel teased in the beginning with like her little like, what are these little memories that I, sorry that was sort of spoilery, but they all came to fruition and they all got plucked from the tree.
Yeah.
Like you felt, like, hey, yeah, woo, I learned that.
Yeah.
So
Like nothing was wasted.
right.
There was nothing superfluous just for the sake of using
Yeah.
that
I didn't.
theatrical technique.
Yeah, I didn't leave the theater going, but what about that thing that they showed us and then they never told us? So,
Like, well, we bring it up all the time, but the circle.
no.
But that you saying it that way about keeping yourself in the dark reminds me that if there is at some point then something I'm going to have to talk about, that you're going to have to leave the room
Does it
in relation
relate to Endgame?
yeah.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
I don't know if I want to know. Do I know this?
You sent me the trailer that I
Okay.
information
All right.
from.
I don't know if you're going above and beyond some of the stuff that I've.
No,
We've seen.
You sent me the trailer. That's the only trailer I have watched. I
Okay.
told you then that was all I was going to watch, and that's all I have watched.
Okay. All right.
But there is something in a previous assumption that I had about said trailer that has now been proven wrong.
Yeah.
That I will have to discuss because now it's down to one other possibility.
Weren't we
Okay.
just talking before the show started about your calling yourself a prophet earlier?
That was about one thing in particular.
Yeah, we'll get into
That's
that
just what I wrote as a note
future
when I was
episode.
listening to something. That's spoilers for a future episode about my prophetic tendencies.
Mike, speaking of spoilers, it's time to get into the spoiler part of this podcast. So if you haven't seen Captain Marvel and don't want any spoilers, pause this now. Come back to the podcast after you've seen the movie. At this point, I'm going to assume you've seen other MCU movies because we'll extend that spoiler for anything else we feel like we want to cover and talk about. Last chance for spoiler warning for Captain Marvel and all other MCU movies.
Spoiler! Spoiler! Something like that.
All right, we're in the spoiler zone. Who wants to start with anything spoilerific?
I will.
Okay. Hit us off.
All right, you did not need Ronan in this movie at all.
No, not at all.
I don't know why. Okay, so I will almost like immediately argue against myself. Is that since this movie is set so far in advance of the other stories, if they will have a direct sequel to this somewhere else in the timeline between this and Guardians of 1, something else could occur, but I still don't feel that you even needed to establish Ronan specifically as being present. You already know he's part of the Kree.
Yeah.
If you wanted to pull him in a later chapter, it didn't matter that he was there or not. Even the scenes he was in were inconsequential.
I have two major thoughts about Ronan.
Okay.
In this case, first, you're right. He absolutely doesn't need to be there. There's no reason for it whatsoever. And I feel like it's one of the major problems I have with the film. And I'll get into that in a second. But first, I'm just going to fanboy on they finally put him in fucking green. Thank God.
Who, Ronan?
Yes, Ronan.
Okay.
Ronan never wore black. Ronan, he had a ridiculous green getup in the comics that...
Was his outfit green in this
I
movie?
don't realize it being
I
green.
didn't realize it was
If
green.
it was like a forest
If he
green.
would have
I-
stood in the
very,
light...
very dark hunter green or something.
Yeah.
if he would have stood in the light, it would have popped out as green.
Okay.
He was in the shade most of the time you've seen him in this movie, but it was very different from the dark garb that they have him in Guardians of the Galaxy, which so this is what they did that I'm very happy they put him in green, but they did not give him his face paint, which made him look like a fucking idiot.
Which I thought about that
looks
because I was like,
strange.
wait, is that Lee Pace? I can't tell because I wasn't used to having less makeup from what we
His
know in
eyes are
Guardians.
different too.
Yeah.
But then you think about it, and they put that paint on him at the beginning of Guardians.
they
So that's
did.
why it's not there.
But-
They did.
I don't know of any panel in any comic that Ronan is displayed without it. I would have to look for it specifically to try and find
Maybe he's
it.
not like the main accuser like he is in Guardians yet. Like I felt like
They're
the
trying
face
to make a
paint.
distinction
Yeah,
Seemed like he was in
between
charge.
now and what he'll become.
right. But in the Guardians, you're led to believe he's leading this whatever rogue group of Kree or whatever the hell. So that's him like ascending to the leadership role of whatever this group
I
is.
feel like where
Yeah,
he's at
so
in
this
Guardians
is-
is like post her taking down the mind or whatever it was called.
Yeah, probably.
I feel like, and that's maybe what splinters the Kree into two groups: those that follow Ronan and those that don't. Which would be an interesting sequel to this, but I feel like if it is the sequel to this, it'll fall into the same trap that this movie fell into, which is, in this specific instance, Ronan was the biggest threat in the film.
Yes, that she never has to deal with.
Who's the villain in this film? Because
It's more of a conflict as opposed to an adversary.
there's
know?
nobody in the film that could stand up to her.
Right.
Not even close. Once she was never actually in danger. Especially, I think, for people that have read any Captain Marvel comics, and you understand the Omega level powers that she possesses.
It's the Superman problem.
Right. And it's one of the reasons I never got into Superman, is because he's Superman. He's gonna, like, there's no vulnerability whatsoever. It's why Batman's so much better, in my opinion. But I get that some people like that. But I felt like Jude Law's character, whose name is like,
I honestly don't remember.
okay, it's a weird.
Yawn wrong. I have no idea.
It's actually
it's
not-
close.
I would have believed you. I did not know.
That's
It's really
actually
close.
Yeah, that's very close. So we'll call him Jan Rog until Josh looks it up and tells me what it actually is.
Thought you just found a way to say you're wrong very
It's Jan
differently.
Rog.
And
It is Jan Rog?
YONROGG.
Okay.
What a troll.
So Jan Rog, he could never stand up to her. He couldn't stand up to her using her powers before. The only reason he could is because he had some kind of, like, capacitor on her powers.
Suppression,
That was,
yeah.
suppressing her down. So, and even then, if she decided to put him down, she probably could, because he wouldn't have time to press the button. And I felt like that was one of the big problems I had with the movie was, okay, we have Ronan. Ronan might be able to stand up to her.
That's what I was waiting for in the third act. Is I
Yeah.
thought once Jude Law realizes that she has come to know her past and what they did to her and everything, that then Ronan has to step up to the plate, and he would basically be the big bad.
Right.
And yeah, that didn't happen.
Right.
but I guess
She's
that wouldn't
still
be as fun too, because he survives.
True, but you
Survives
at
is
least,
different than loses.
Yeah.
Like I don't think she would have to kill him necessarily
Yeah,
if
okay.
it
have
were
to
to
stop
fight.
to stop his plot in the same way that she stopped Jude Law's plot.
Right.
But yeah, Ronan might have seemed a more formidable challenge.
Right. And she just kind of stares him down, and he's like, nope. Which, don't get me wrong, if I was him, that's what I would have done in that scenario too. She just blew up the ship without my input. I probably can't win this fight. I'm gonna run.
Yeah, we'll come back for her
But
later.
when they're making the
That's what
story,
we'll
they
do.
could have put somebody there who wouldn't run. Somebody who still would have lost, because it's a movie. When's the last time they lost?
Infinity War.
Did they? We don't know yet.
Seems pretty apparent that a lot of people lost.
But that doesn't seem like the point of her movie, though, was for her to beat a bad guy. It was just, the point of this was to figure out who she was,
I agree,
You know what I
but
mean?
And then beat a bad guy.
and then she can beat up somebody. And now she's like,
But if-
okay,
and that's what
I know who I
How many
am
bad
now.
guys can I beat up now?
That's what I
Destroy
found so
all
stark
y'all.
is that was her journey. So why, like, you didn't need him there at all, because to me then
But she had
if he's
something-
going to run away, he's pointless.
yeah.
Was there any reason they needed to explain more of his backstory? Because of the whole thing where who you think is good, there's that flip. And because when I first saw him, I picked him out immediately from just when I heard the accusers at the beginning. I was like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
So before the whole big reveal, I was thinking, okay, so are we going to figure out if he originally was on the side of good? Like, what is there something that will then give me more about his backstory to how he turns, how he is in Guardians? But then with the whole flip, I was like, okay, so he's always.
Well, that was a conversation we had after the movie. Was that I was trying to figure out if it was the entire race of Kree that they represent, or just a small part of the Kree that they represent. Because we know, like you said, we know Ronan's bad from Guardians. So the second Jude Law talks to Ronan, you're like, oh, okay, he's part of that splinter cell. Or are they representing all of Kree trying to go after the Skrulls? That's where I was still.
I almost feel like it's supposed to be all. Well, at least the way that they set her on the in the city and everything, and that they're not, some fraction.
And the fact that they are
group.
worshiping the Supreme Intelligence, and the Supreme Intelligence seems to be supporting what Ronan and Jude Law are doing, that leads me to believe it's the entire Kree race. And we talked after the movie, as I thought that was flipped, because I thought we were supposed to be rooting for the Kree against the Skrulls, which I had to look up, and I sent these two guys on Friday. The Marvel Wiki says that the Kree were a race of peaceful beings that were then enslaved by the Kree, and then they decided to fight back, and that's why the Kree got involved in war and stuff like that. So the movie actually represents what the comics originally did, which I did not know. I thought it was a big twist that they flipped the sides.
So then it's hard to tell. So then once you get to Ronan and Guardians, then there's got to be some other move where the bulk of Kree civilization wants to change.
I think what Mike said
their
could be
leadership.
the plot of the sequel.
Right.
Is she goes off to blow
that
up the
causes
intelligence.
him to say, no, we've been doing this for so long. I'm just going to lead a faction on my own still.
I feel like the Supreme Intelligence is perhaps mind-washing the Kree a bit, and maybe it's not that they're all bad, it's that they, it seemed to me, at least in this one, they don't really explain it, but it seemed to me that a lot of them have like a daily meetup with the Supreme Intelligence. When, they sit her down, seemingly for no other reason than just for her daily visit to worship the Supreme Intelligence. And if they're all having that, then the Supreme Intelligence is fucking with them and kind of making it, making its own prophecy.
Even if Supreme Intelligence is only influencing the top tier, it's being trickled down to everybody,
right.
And they're like, well, we're not worthy of Supreme Intelligence, but if this is what they're telling us, then...
I think the only splinter cell you could say within the Kree would be Marvel herself. She was the only one that kind of splintered off and sort of was like, I am opposed to this war, which every other Kree that we've known has been like, Skrull bad,
Well, I mean, it also seems like the Kree just pick out anybody who they want to effing hate because they don't like the Skrulls here. By the time they get the Guardians, it's the Xandarians. So there must be a group of them just hate everybody.
Well, I think either that's a very big group or it's the entire race like we're sort of talking about. Because the more I thought about it, too, I don't remember how far into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. you are, but the Kree show up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. if you've gotten that.
I mean, I know a little bit about the Kree research they did to rebuild Coulson.
Like, you actually start seeing Kree aliens later
you actually
on.
get to start
so
seeing them.
the fact that they show up and they're always the villains in that show, it's led me to believe, well, it probably is like the entire race and not just this... what we think is a small group, but there's a shit ton of people there. I think it is the whole thing.
Is it also because the Kree... It seems like the Kree in this movie are not necessarily trying to conquer everything. They have where they are, and they don't... They're going after the Skrulls, but it doesn't...
Yeah.
At least it didn't portray it like that they're going after every other race that's out there trying to dominate. Where in Guardians, it almost seems like Ronan was going around. Like, he got... Where was Drax from?
I don't remember the planet.
But
where he was
he
from.
went and killed his whole
True.
family. So at that point, has Ronan then moved on? And we don't know, is he representing the entire Kree of they're now trying to expand?
See, I thought they made it a point to say in Guardians that Ronan somehow split off from the main
I couldn't
group.
remember.
Yeah,
That's what it felt like because after they basically opened the movie talking about the peace treaty that has
Right.
finally been agreed upon between the Kree overall civilization and Xandar.
Which is what
Is
Ronan
he
didn't agree
actually
with,
a-
and that's why he
Right.
flips
Is
the
he
shit.
actually a rogue, or
Is
is
he just staying where he was and the rest of the Kree moved?
True.
Well, no,
To a more peaceful area.
I
where
was
he's like,
saying
I'm staying the course.
Yeah.
Perhaps the Kree agreed to a peace treaty and told Ronan, no, keep
Still
at it.
go at it. It's possible.
Like in, hushed tones behind closed doors, the truth is they want Ronan doing it so they don't take any method or...
Yeah.
I feel like the
anything
short
to
answer
stop
is
him.
I want this answered in Captain Marvel 2.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know
And maybe
more
there'll
about
be
this
some-
race.
Maybe there'll be some payoff where you do see the destruction or conquering of Drax's people.
Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get that move of, you get a cameo of Drax years before Guardians takes place. And
Given Dave Bautista's current feelings towards everything, I
Granted.
highly doubt that.
granted, but story-wise,
Story-wise, it'd
Eventually
be
you
cool.
could.
I just don't think they're going to write that in at this point, not knowing
Yeah.
where he's actually
I
going
don't
to
think
stand.
he has to be there for that, though. Ronan could conquer the planet,
he
kill
said
his
cameo.
family.
well, I don't see why you wouldn't do it if you're going.
I mean, they do say Drax
To
killed
show this at
hundreds
all.
of Ronin's forces. I think that would
Okay,
be
yeah, that's
something
fair, that's
awesome to watch Drax just...
CG Dave Batista just running through
Oh,
everybody.
God. I can imagine the lawsuit from that.
I'm sure he signed over his likeness. They could probably do whatever they want with him. It's the same reason Star Wars people can just they put out their likeness on everything.
Did anybody else notice that Ronan actually reported to Jude Law's character?
Ooh, I don't know
Like
if
he
I-
actually
I didn't.
calls him Commander. He says yes, Commander, in one of those like weird hollow calls or whatever.
I guess I just assumed it was the other way around.
Yeah, same here. But he Jude Law was the one like, okay, Ronan, come here, bomb the shit out of them. He was the one that commanded him to do that, and he said yes, Commander.
I
I'll
kind
have to
of
look
feel
for
like
that on
he's
Google.
and that
overpaid
seemed
it.
odd. Like, what is Jude Law's role in the Kree military? And that somebody as powerful as Ronan is like, yes, master. Like
I almost feel like was Jude Law and all of them. They were almost like special. If we gave like special forces in the U.S., like if they could then command over anyone else, because they were the elite.
Yes.
Sneaking
Right.
in, and Ronan, they were kind of like, for lack of a word, like the artillery and
grunts,
infantry
like-
coming in for
Okay.
cover.
okay, so maybe he's special forces.
But-
and then,
but, yeah, but if it
like
was where-
regular military, yeah, he could be
And
like,
somehow they gave him the command power.
They do put Ronan at the head of the accusers here, so he is at least with the accusers. Now that's actually where I would put the special forces team, is with the accusers. That's what they would be, is that special team that they would call in. And it seems maybe their command system doesn't operate the same way, but I feel like, I don't know, that's actually really difficult to decipher, because the accusers were never grunts. They were never the standard infantry. They were an elite unit.
Because at least the way they're
And-
portrayed here is that they are the artillery. You never see them going to the planet necessarily and doing the groundwork. They always show them bombing.
in
That's
this
Well,
one,
yeah,
he's
well,
doing
that-
it.
in
that's
Xandar,
because-
yeah.
Yeah, Ronan was a prick.
Well, like,
He didn't
if
care
we
to.
can't handle this quietly on the ground, then call you in.
Yeah, but I mean, like, or maybe like, I always think of, I don't know. Never mind.
Well, I think you're looking at a united Kree force here, where Ronan is going to take the advice or orders of whoever is in the scenario, because he actually is working with his own people, as opposed to where we see him in Guardians, where he's just kind of like, fuck the world, I'm doing what I want. Because, nobody's going to command him at that point. And he makes, seems almost like the Kree that they talk to are horrified of Ronan, just like everybody else is. It may be something where he says, well, that's your problem, and he closes the thing.
That guy, yeah.
It
But-
also brings up another point that I wanted to make. Is Jude Law, or the Kree in general, are they working for Thanos because they were specifically looking for the Tesseract?
Good question.
And so was Ronan
Yeah.
before Ronan knew what he had. He was actually working for Thanos.
Looking for the power stone.
Look-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jude Law, maybe like he wasn't, but maybe the artificial intelligence was like, "Hey, yeah, we're in cahoots with Thanos."
That's a good
When we
There's a
go to-
lot of ways they could play that supreme intelligence
Yeah.
going
since-
forward.
I would also like to say that this is tangential, but a question I've always had is, they never have, at least I missed it, they never answered how Thanos already had the Mind Stone when he gave it to Loki for the staff. And I don't know if anything that they'll ever do, and now that Endgame's coming up, I don't know if it'll even matter, but like after a chapter, movies after that, will it even matter to ever answer that question? But could that have anything to do with it, or is he using these other pawns clandestinely to help him find these other things?
Right. I'm kind of hoping they answer that in the Loki-centric
Oh, they could do that.
TV
Well,
series.
True.
it's not like
Okay,
Loki
yeah.
found it. He was just handed a stick with it. It's attached to the end of it.
Yeah,
Right,
Like
but
maybe
Thanos
they'll just give that reveal.
bequeaths it
Yeah.
to him.
So that at the end of the series, he gets the staff.
Maybe.
Could be. Maybe leading up to that.
Well, I mean, here's the other.
Because I don't feel like his Loki Pokey stick is going to be part of the series at all.
Him handed the staff, like, use this.
In
Does that-
Avengers, yes.
Yeah.
in the
We see
opening-
him directly handed it.
Not from Thanos, but Thanos' underling gives it to
Gives
Loki.
it to him.
Yeah, it is the opening shots.
Oh.
So, just spitballing.
Yeah.
Is it possible he sends Loki to get it? Loki brings it back, and he says, good dog. Now go get this one. You can use that to go get it.
I feel like if Loki knew he had an Infinity Stone, he wouldn't.
He wouldn't know what he had.
That's right. But if
Right,
he
but if he
finds
did-
it,
He wouldn't even know that the Tesseract was one.
right? But I feel like if he's sent to find something like that, and then I feel like he's smart enough to know what he would have if he is the one looking for it.
Because I'm trying to remember, like, Thor knew about the Tesseract.
Yes.
But
And
he
so
didn't. But
he
he
didn't-
didn't know.
He didn't know it was
yet.
an Infinity Stone, but
Yeah,
he
to, like,
knew
Ultron,
more
I think.
about it than other. And you'd think because it came, he knew about it from his father, from his upbringing. So if he Loki would know about the Tesseract, he might not know it's an Infinity Stone and all that stuff.
But out of the two of them, which one do you think would actually study?
I never thought Loki was never stupid
Thor
though.
said that he learned Groot taking an elective. So
Yes.
And
And he's
Yeah.
1,500 years old. 1,500 years is a
And
lot of
if-
time to
If
read.
Frigga was teaching him about magic, you'd think powerful stones would be in
the
there.
sports bro personality that you meet with Thor in the first Thor movie does
Yeah.
not lend me to believe
No.
he would know what the hell he's got. Loki, on the other hand, conniving, mischievous, he would know what he has.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, to make that same argument, Loki has 2 Infinity Stones at his disposal at the end of the first Avengers film.
Yeah.
He uses them to measly and mizzle away an invasion of Earth.
Right, exactly. He didn't know what he had.
I think he knew
That's
they were
what we're talking
powerful.
about.
He didn't know.
Hunting, I don't know. I feel like he'd have more time with him if they send him off to get the Mind Stone somewhere before he gives it back to Thanos. I feel like that would, I don't know. In my mind, he would have a better way to. I don't know where I'm going. I'm totally losing my train of thought now.
I think we could follow his journey to obtain the scepter, or some part of it. Maybe he doesn't actually physically obtain it himself. Maybe he aids said group that does. Maybe
If it's more on the peripheral, I think I'd be fine with that.
Hold on. Is it in Dark World? Where is it where they explain about the beginning of the universe? And Odin has that whole conversation, and he talks about it breaking apart, and he talks about.
I think that might be Dark World.
Is that Dark World? But that's the thing is they knew about the stones.
does Odin give a speech?
No,
about
no,
that?
that's in Guardians.
But
That's the
there's
collector
Odin-
that gives
The
the
collector
original
does that
Odin
speech.
does
Guardians.
something with Natalie Portman's character.
Yeah, when
she
she's infected
goes-
with the ether,
she's
That's
infected,
right.
it does
he
the
tells Thor
whole
about all that stuff.
story.
I feel like Odin
Good
tells a
call.
lot of stories, and I feel like Thor
Well,
looking
Thor might
up,
not have-
looking up to Odin like he did, like Odin was, the epitome of life, and Thor looking up to him as he did would listen to everything that
Right.
Odin would say, and I feel like Odin said a lot, told him a lot of stories.
Because I just can't remember
that
exactly
Thor
what he
either
said.
did or
It's
did
not
not
what the
actually
collector
put
says, but
together,
it's similar.
but he would, in the back of his mind, know, which is why he had to go to the
He
pools of
talks about dark
reflection
elves and
to actually.
But isn't that like a...
He already knew it. He just had to bring it about.
I could buy that.
I'm with you. I got you.
I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I watched The Dark World, but isn't that like a
It's been a long time since
like a
anyone watched The
narration
Dark World.
Zing.
over scenes explaining, like in the beginning of the movie, where we don't really know who he's talking to?
But he does a whole thing with when Natalie Portman specifically, when she's taken to Asgard because of what has happened.
I think he's right. Yeah.
But
But
he says something to her. But that's the thing. My point is that there was knowledge of this in Asgard that I think Loki and Thor would have known. Do they know everything and the absolute power that they have? No. But they knew about the Tesseract before people on Earth did. They knew about the ether and what some things could do.
And to be fair, Odin may not teach his children as much as we think about the Infinity Stones, because Hela walks right past the Tesseract and kind of says, not bad, but I'm looking for this flame.
True.
Which, by comparison of
Like
powers,
they
the
might
flame
recognize
seems
it.
kind of weak compared to the Tesseract.
Yeah, like Loki with the Tesseract and Hela with it might realize, well, there's things that I can do with this, but I don't understand that it's part of a greater whole. I don't understand the puzzle piece that it fits into.
And I think that's maybe what I was getting at there, is that they know of the Infinity Stones. They know what they, are, but they maybe don't have any clue where that they are.
Yeah.
And perhaps in locating said scepter, he's getting a powerful weapon, but but Thanos promises him an army in return for that, without telling him that perhaps you can use this weapon while using the army if you bring me this back.
I also took that scene with Hela differently. It's because when she's getting the flame, isn't that when she goes to wake up the army and her pet underneath? I almost looked at it as like, not bad. You have this. Like, this is here for me now, not as I can't, because that wasn't useful for what she wanted to do at that moment.
I don't know. I feel like the space I feel like the Tesseract, she wouldn't need an army. I honestly felt like she never needed the army to begin with.
That's a possibility because her whole problem apparently in Asgard is Heimdall stole the Bifrost sword, so she can't leave Asgard. If she knew what the Tesseract did and the powers of the Space Stone, she wouldn't need the Bifrost.
And I interpreted it like Sarah. I'm a Sarah on this one.
All right.
The other thing is she's been imprisoned for so long. Maybe she's also thinking she's going step by step by step instead of I'm just going to immediately jump into trying to conquer everything.
Perhaps.
Plus, she could also be like, "I'll get to you later."
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought of. Is like,
Okay.
oh,
Like,
I
I
have
have
like
time.
later.
Like, I'll get back. to
She
you.
had more than
She also wanted to see her puppy. She hadn't seen him for a
Yeah.
really long time.
she had more than a few grudges against Asgard too, so that's probably where I would have started.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
All right, I want to bring us back to Captain Marvel. Anything else specifically for Captain Marvel
Sorry,
that we want to talk about?
You got all kinds of sidetracks.
You start talking about Loki. You
Well,
know
see,
I'm
so-
just
I know.
gonna go.
Since we were talking about the Tesseract, I can turn that into something we discussed briefly after the movie, and then I think a little bit more when you sent me the last message about the Tesseract's path to Marvel, and how she wound up with it. And then you sent me the picture from the first Avengers film.
Yeah, can I start with my question that I asked you guys after? That's going to lead into this whole conversation,
Absolutely.
which was the timeline. One of the timeline plot holes I thought for me was the last we see the Tesseract in the MCU timeline at this point was that Captain America had it. He crashes the plane. It falls to the ocean. Howard Stark picks it up out of the ocean. And the next time we see it is present day with Nick Fury at S.H.I.E.L.D. So in my mind, how does it get from Howard Stark to Marvel in the time in between?
Well,
And Mike had explained to me that it's the whole Pegasus project thing. And that was the picture that I sent you from the
Yes.
opening of Avengers, which I can buy that explanation now, because to me they were two separate government entities, and the picture was there's an opening shot of the first Avengers movie that's just a sign at the facility where they're testing the Tesseract, and they blow by it real quickly. It says Project Pegasus on the sign.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have put anything.
I didn't
wouldn't
get
have
that
put
either.
any
Would have.
weight to that. Yeah, it
Yeah.
just-
And my response to Brian on that was just, well done, Feige.
Yeah.
You did your job.
The breadcrumbs were well placed.
You knew what you were doing all the way back then. I like it.
Yeah,
You know.
so I can buy that. Howard Stark somehow was just like, okay, I'll give it to this person who knows what they're doing, and whether or not he knew she was a Kree, or just a very well-known scientist that can experiment with this kind of stuff, it remains to be seen. But
yeah, for all we know, they ran experiments together.
Right.
And then he was like, you know what, I'm going to leave this project, but you keep going on it. I'm going to work on whatever the unknown element that he sends to
yeah,
is.
so I can buy that explanation now.
So is there? I can't remember quite now. Is there a point after Cap crashes in the ocean at the end of the first Avenger that you then literally see anybody retrieving, utilizing, testing, doing something with the Tesseract?
No.
All of a sudden, it's if I remember, because the first Thor was technically released 2 months. Not even technically, it was released 2 months before the first Avenger. The post credits to that movie is Eric Selvig with Shield. Yes, quote Eric Selvig as Loki over his shoulder, or Loki impersonating him, whatever we're supposed to glean there. Being shown the Tesseract.
Yeah.
So at the end of Thor, and this was the disconnect in my mind. The movie Thor doesn't have the Tesseract in it.
Right.
I don't even remember if it's shown in the trophy room. It might be, but it does not play a role in the plot of Thor.
Right.
But it shows up in the post-credit scene so that they can set up Avengers.
Right.
2 months later, First Avenger gets released, and the Tesseract is very central to that.
Yes.
So it has been placed on Earth at some point in the ancient past, presumably. Hugo Weaving's character knows of its lore and wants to find it.
Yes.
He does. He utilizes it. Cap tries to get it back. It sends Red Skull to Vormir.
Yes.
Right?
I think.
He becomes the
Sounds
guardian
right.
of space, the Soul Stone. But the Tesseract is still on the ship.
It falls through the
Cap
ship.
Crashes. It
Yeah.
falls
It
through the
falls
ship. That's
through.
right. It falls through before Cap has to crash. So Cap, the ship, and the Tesseract are both just in the ocean somewhere off the eastern seaboard of the U.S., presumably.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along the way, they say what through exposition that
You
Howard
see
Stark-
Howard Stark.
with like a little claw thing.
Yes.
When does that? I have a memory of this vision.
They're
but I
scanning
have
the
this
ocean
image.
looking for Cap.
When does this happen?
Or when do
the-
they show the
The
that
end of
flashback?
the first Captain America movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, before he wakes up
Right.
in the fake
Yes.
thing that they're trying to set up for him.
Yes.
But he's actually in the present day.
Yes.
They do. Okay, I guess I got to go back and watch.
Yeah,
Cap.
he's
It's been a
combing the ocean looking for the wreckage of the plane, doesn't find the plane, but finds this power source,
while. Okay.
picks it up from the ocean, and then he's like, oh, we'll keep looking. Try the next grid. And then they move
Yeah.
on to keep searching for Cap.
Okay. And so there's nothing else through like Ant-Man or anywhere else where Howard Stark pops up where they show chronologically that the Tesseract is used or
No.
has, and then really from our timeline, the next time it would chronologically appear is now Captain Marvel, but then the next moment after that is the post credits of Thor,
Yes.
where Eric Selvig as Loki, whoever, is being shown it, and then we're into the events of the beginning of Thor where they're doing energy testing.
Beginning of Avengers, but yes.
Avengers,
Yeah.
So,
yes.
so the chain of ownership that we see is, I don't know if the David Bradley's character has a name at the beginning of First Avenger, but that character
Oh, right.
to the Red Skull to Cap into the ocean to Howard Stark and Shield, somehow then to Marvel.
Like 50 years later,
Mm.
35 to 40ish years later.
We don't know when he gave it to her. We
Right.
have, it
So,
could
well,
be
I mean,
5
I'm thinking
years
like end
later
of
for
World
all
War
we know.
II, and Carol
But-
Danvers disappears in 1889. So
Right.
somewhere in 40 years.
Yeah, somewhere in there it gets to Marvel,
Right.
And then somewhere after that, well, not somewhere. We know where.
Right.
It gets to
The
Fury,
Dark
and shit.
Energy Project or whatever it
Which-
was called. Yeah. All right.
Kind of upsets a little bit of the timeline, too, because by the time we get to Avengers, it's like, okay, they're using the Tesseract to make weapons. So why are they suddenly trying to make weapons with this power source? And Nick Fury points to Thor and says, it's your fault. You showed up. Now we realize we're part of this intergalactic thing where people can just show up and terrorize the planet. But that happened, 10, 20 years before in
earlier.
Captain Marvel. So why did they not start making weapons then?
Yeah, when they realized the alien showed up.
Right,
Captain
when you
Marvel.
literally had aliens show up.
The only thing I can think of is they couldn't figure out how to make weapons out of it.
Yeah, you
at
could
the
play it
time.
off as technology wasn't there yet. They didn't know what to do with the power
using it.
source. That's why they waited that long. Sure.
Because you'd think like the Kree was obviously technologically light years advanced.
Yeah.
So Marvell knew a little bit more about it, but you're also thinking like, could she really, without exposing, like, could they show how much she knew? If they don't know that she's Kree,
Right.
she can't just all of a sudden be like, look what this could do, and they're like, how do you know that?
Yeah. Well, that's why she's
Or-
trying to integrate it with Earth
Right.
technology.
Exactly. So I think
Put it
is
in a
one
plane.
of those like maybe she can't do everything with it, or show them like you could make weapons, you could do this, you could do this, if she even knew that. And then I guess energy would be if they didn't need to make weapons out of it.
Right. Up
that
until
time.
Captain Marvel, they didn't need to make weapons. But I'm saying post Captain Marvel, they should immediately, knowing how governments work, start making weapons with it.
Not to mention that Arnim Zola was making weapons with it.
Oh, yeah, during World War II.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other discussion
That's
about
true.
where all the people that got shot with those weapons wound up, since they really weren't killed; they were just transported somewhere. Probably.
I was wondering that, but can you presume that the same thing happens to them? And is there a difference because Red Skull literally tried to lay his quote bare hands on it? He tried, just like the Power Stone almost. He tried to.
I'm sure we'll never get the
possess it,
actual
so to
answer
speak.
to that
Those guys
question.
disintegrated. They're all dead.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Just leave it at
they're
that.
gone.
Yeah, like we won't get an answer.
They're vaporized.
You're going to see the soldiers from Hydra just show up and be like, hey, remember us? We were alive back then. Now we're here. Hello.
Mostly it was the U.S. soldiers that got
then
shot
they-
with it.
Well, he shot some of his own guys.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true. He did do that.
But yeah,
That's-
the timeline for me is okay, which the whole retconning thing, because Howard Stark has it at the end of Captain America. It goes to storage or something, just shield bunker somewhere. Nick Fury brings it out post
Next
Thor
to the
to
Ark of
start
the
working
Covenant.
on stuff, and that's when we see it in Avengers and stuff. So yeah, the whole retconning thing for the gap in between. I feel like still needs a little bit more explanation for me. I'd like to see a little bit more there, but I'm buying the connective tissue that like Mike is representing and trying to argue for me. So I'll buy it.
And nothing says we don't get more later.
Yeah, and I'm
about what
hoping.
happens,
Yeah, I hate
because-
inferring things. I like when things are explained to me explicitly.
Well,
So-
I mean, but we can't have everything all at once.
That's true. I
you
know.
Brian wants
Yeah.
it right now.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm that kind of.
we're kind of left to assume that as soon as it lands on Fury's desk, he's probably pretty much like, yeah, start researching this. Someone,
What
please,
is this
science.
actually?
Yeah,
Also,
like
how long
let's.
did
someone come
Flurkin have
science
it?
this,
How
please?
long did it
Figure
take
this out.
Flurkin to
Yeah.
cough it back up?
That's true. We don't know when that
Because
vomit scene
Flurkin already
happens.
made the point of like, I don't perform when you want me to.
Well, no, I feel like
Flurkin.
that was because the Skrulls were
Well,
there.
that too. But
and
I
he
also
knew
feel
that.
like it's a cat. Even if it's a cat.
Yeah.
That's how cats are.
It's got some universal asshole level.
The
Yeah.
most
No matter
inaccurate
what.
part of that, though, is that it did it on like a
clean-
wood, a wood surface. It
Oh
wasn't
no,
on
it would have been on carpet.
More easily cleans to the surface.
It would have been
yes.
on the keyboard.
Yeah.
So it's like go.
on the notes that he was taking.
Yeah.
Or something, yeah.
I feel like it would have been better if it was while Fury was holding it. Like if Fury was holding the cat and it just threw up on him.
But he
feel
was
like
like
that
quite
would've-
sure what it was about to do. Like, what's that? What's that noise? What you make?
Yeah, what are you going to do, kitty?
what is this?
Doing the stupid
I know.
cute thing he was doing with the cat the whole movie.
That was.
I loved it.
such
I
a
loved
fan-
that side of him.
Yes.
I thought this was so fun.
It's really weird
Yeah.
to see Nick Fury that happy.
It is,
I
but
know.
it really humanized him. I
Yes.
thought, and
Yes.
he's a soldier in every other aspect of the MCU. He's a soldier.
Yes.
He's a leader. He's a soldier, and him singing to Captain Marvel and him
Yeah.
cuddling with the cat really humanized him in a way that I didn't think was going to happen.
and that's
it
why I
really
got the impression
endeared
that what
even-
he is, he's been.
I've
for a
already
very
liked
long
him,
time.
but it really endears you to him that much more. Like,
Yes.
this guy's a cool guy.
Because that's what being a human is about. Is because there's always something. There's nobody that's 100% hard ass all the time. Everybody's got something, and for him, it's a kitty. you show Nick Fury a kitty, and he turns into one himself. It changes how he feels about a situation, and I think that's, like you said, that's great to humanize him in that way.
But still, he was joking with people. He doesn't
Yes.
joke with people in the other
Yeah.
movies.
Like, I think the
Maybe-
closest you could get to a joke with him was in Winter Soldier. I think when he says, "See, this is why I have trust issues.
Yeah.
Which I still feel like we're waiting for that event when he gets trust issues. Like, when does that happen? The turn from the personality we see here to Avengers and Iron Man and stuff like that.
I feel like trust issues happen in this movie.
Yeah, I was going to say the Skrulls.
Yeah.
But they weren't the bad guys, though.
No, but I mean,
but
his own boss was the bad guy.
And he still ended up laughing
time.
about it by the end of the movie, so he's not
Yeah,
like...
but at the time, the Skrulls were the bad guys. I mean, he didn't realize.
But then he's
that's
also
what was gonna
observing
happen.
what other people go through. So being an observer to Carol and what she had to come to realize about her own truth and what was done to her. Like, it doesn't always have to be like someone did something to me.
Yeah.
I've seen what people can do to each other.
Just from the car scene where he kind of gets into the wreck.
That was
like,
cool.
Hey, I'm riding with Coulson. Fuck, it ain't Coulson.
Yeah.
And I feel like to say Nick Fury hasn't had his humorous moments is a bit... Like, I can think of it at least...
Not this heavily in one movie.
He hasn't been this heavily in one movie.
He was washing dishes. And like, you know, having dinner, playing with little kids.
Right, but I'm saying, like, he
playing with
hasn't
cat,
been a
watching-
central figure this way. He's been a peripheral figure when he shows up. Even in Winter Soldier, he's a peripheral figure. He plays a major role, but he's not a character that's on screen a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah, but
And
there's still a
all
very
the times
distinct
he's on
change in
screen-
personality.
but all the times he's on screen, I'd say that's like his next biggest film among them. I think he spends more time on screen and playing a biggest role in that other than this. And it seems like every time he's on screen, he's actively in battle. Like, something is actively happening to keep him that serious because he really kind of has to be. But you get Avengers where, you know, he makes the $10 bet. You get...
See, I get the point you're making, but I feel like a lot of them are more ironic.
You kiss your mother with that mouth?
Cynical moments. They are, but he's not a happy person.
I
You still
don't...
wouldn't want to go have a beer with him. Like, you're
No,
still
he doesn't want to have a beer with
intimidated
you.
by him. Yeah, exactly.
No, there's a definite personality shift that occurs somewhere.
Maybe
like a-
it's Florkin DNA.
Well, I love how, because that's what he says. Remember before he says, like, I trusted someone once, and he says it cost me an eye, or I lost an eye, or
There's his trust issues. Yeah,
that's in one of the. I can't remember if that's
You're right.
Winter Soldier. He says
That had to be a throwaway
movies.
line that then becomes
I
a
think it's
joke
Winter
in this
Soldier.
movie.
I think it's Winter Soldier, but that's the thing. And then I was like, so then
No.
the whole movie, I'm like, where's it lose the eye? And
I
Right.
love the tease of that too.
Yeah.
What if you're like, no,
That's
no.
what I just realized. That's what I was waiting for. Is in Hot Tub Time Machine. When they meet
What?
the character of Crispin Glover in that movie,
We collectively all went, what the fuck are
and
you
he
talking
only
about?
he's missing part of his arm.
They go back and...
And they go back
He
in
has
time,
both arms.
and like Rob Corddry's character the whole time is noticing all these events, like, oh, this is where it's going to happen. This is where it's
Yeah,
gonna...
yeah.
And it doesn't.
Was this the second one?
No, it's in the first. And then eventually it does, but the whole time you're waiting for, like, oh, this is where subconsciously I just realized this is the moment I
Yes.
was having with Fury the whole
Yeah,
time. Like,
I
is this
agree.
gonna be the scene? Is this gonna be it? This is what's something's gonna hit him, right? He's gonna get in a fight. There's aliens, of course he'll lose an eye. No, it's a damn cat. Well, it's an alien too, but still.
And I think that's part of the trust issues. Even you could even say, like, yeah, I trusted somebody and it was a cat.
yeah, exactly.
I feel like the whole eye thing is like the Trevor Slattery reveal for Iron Man 3. It's like you're expecting this to be this big thing, and it's nope, it's a joke. That's it.
Good point. Yeah.
This thing that makes him look so like tough and
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
It's a throwaway thing.
The other
And
thing
maybe
I was
that's
a
why they
little
went that way.
confused about is, so at the very end when he brings him in like the case of eyes, the eye is still there in Winter Soldier. So
Yeah,
either
I think he's saying like he chooses not to.
Yeah.
but I forget, it's like the way that they make it sound as though he almost never had it. I'm also surprised. Never mind. I don't know where I was going. Forget it. I lost my own train of thought.
I've been there.
Surrendered
I've been
that
there.
match.
Speaking of Coulson, I will say I love Rookie Coulson, and I
Yeah.
wish we had a lot more of it.
I wanted so much more of him.
When I heard he was going to be back in this, I'm like, it's
I know.
perfect. The timeline's there.
I wore my Coulson Live shirt. I expected more Coulson. It
Yes.
was not there.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. The thing that bugged me a little that I wanted to point out was that the de-aging on Samuel L. Jackson was fantastic.
Yes.
And
Very
I
well
felt
done.
like it was kind of mediocre to
On
bad
Clark
on
Gregg.
Coulson.
I feel like it was
Yeah.
the hair.
It was the hair.
Yeah.
The spiky
The
type
hair.
of hair. I couldn't
They could
do
have
it.
left him still a little like thinned down
Yeah.
and whatnot.
It also,
yeah.
I think it was where they put the hairline. It
Yeah.
wasn't far enough forward. It was still kind
It
of.
was like still back, but they tried to poof it.
Right. Yeah.
Like, look,
Yeah.
you're younger. You have more volume. There's not
I
more
thought
surface
when I
area
was looking
cover,
at it too,
but-
I thought the same thing. Like face was not. I think it was the hair.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think it was the hair. The hair distracted me.
yeah.
Either way, it was disappointing that it didn't work as well because we saw the,
It's probably why he wasn't in there very often. They tested it and they're like, oh no, less of him.
yeah.
We only have some. Well, no, Marvel has like no budget anymore. But it'd be like we only have so much aging budget. Focus on.
Well, I feel like it could have been something that I don't know. I don't know why the hell it wound up that way. I don't know how that. I don't know who looked at it and said yes.
He had a lot of up shots too, like
Yeah.
chin up shots. So maybe it looked better in
Yeah.
person.
Speaking of chins, though,
Again, what the fuck?
yeah.
This is the kind of deep talk you
Did
get on Braga and his Super
anybody
Friends.
else notice a stark similarity between the Skrull chins and Thanos' chin?
That's that way even in the comics.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
There was something else I thought of. Fury makes that comment about how I forget exactly how he says it, but it's something like my friends don't call me Nick, or nobody calls him Nick, and that was part of. Doesn't Robert Redford's character call him Nick, and he's the only one? In the other movies, does anybody else that
So
has
you're saying in
interactions-
Winter Soldier he should have just punched Robert Redford in the face and be like, Skrull!
He should have.
I was gonna say
That would have been like, "You're not my friend. You're not my real friend."
maybe that's how Hydra found its way into the modern day as the Skrulls. Retcon Skrulls. Let's.
And if you wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, could you say that in the end, given the character turn,
That's what I'm saying.
right?
Yeah.
He wasn't.
Yeah.
Really,
That's what I thought.
he actually was his enemy.
When I was thinking about the movie afterward, I was like, I think he's the only other character.
I think
I'd have to
Cap gets away
rewatch.
with saying Nick a couple
Does
times, doesn't he?
Oh, well,
Yeah, I feel like I have a moment or two of him or Tony sticking out. Granted, that Tony calls him Fury a lot, but either
maybe.
And Tony would do
Either
it just to
Cap or
dick him
him.
off if he knows that
if it bothers him,
irritates
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony would be
He
the
would go
first
for, like,
one to
full
give him
Nicholas.
his bread sliced diagonal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Love that thing.
Well, when were we having that Was it you and I that was having a conversation about how we want that scene?
Yeah,
we
last
want,
night. Yeah.
We want to see. Josh and I said we want one of the next movies either to have one of the more humanizing moments of Fury. So we were like, maybe it'll be at if Hawkeye still has that farmhouse with his wife and they're sitting down and she it's breakfast. And she just puts the toast in front of him, and it could be like something else completely. They could be talking about a mission, and
There's
just
no
see this
attention given
on
to
the
it.
side of her putting the toast down, and he just kind of sits
He
there.
has like a sneering
I
look,
need that. I need that.
turns back to his bacon and
Pushes
his
the
orange
plate
juice.
away.
I would prefer the Tracy Morgan moment. Just no.
Just roll opposite it. No.
Anybody else have anything? Mike,
So
did you have a list of stuff
Yeah,
you're
no,
trying to
you
get
know
through?
what I know.
I have a list. So
We have to talk more about Goose too.
That's on the list.
yeah, Goose is on my list. The next thing I think that I would bring up, and maybe we should have talked about first, is again, I love this movie. The best moment of being in that theater was not really part of the movie. It was the opening Marvel logo.
Oh, yeah.
The homage
Yeah.
to Stanley
yeah.
was very awesome. That got more claps than the actual movie
Yeah.
in the theater
And
that
it,
I was
it
in.
should have, because
Yeah.
none of
I
this
started to
exists
clap.
without Stan. And that was a theater full of glassy eyes immediately when the movie started.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was a-
Kudos for that.
That was a classy touch, as to instead of they do so many times putting it on the back end
Yeah.
of films,
Right up front.
just right there, replacing all of the typical montage stuff that they've done
Right.
for the last couple of movies. And just,
And even the thank
Yeah.
you Stan before
Yeah.
the movie
Yeah.
even starts.
just say it. Yeah.
And that said as well, his cameo in this film, Kevin Smith tweeted after he went to see the movie, broken down completely in tears.
Saw that.
It was touching.
He
to
had
see
to have
that.
known to some. Well, maybe he didn't know specifically how it was going to be used, but Well, at the same time, I don't know because he doesn't own that movie.
Yeah.
Universal owns that movie.
Is that the Mallrats reference?
Mallrats, yeah.
Yeah, it was the Mallrats.
So Stan's reading.
They might not even had to
Mallrats
go through
script.
Kevin at all to get clearance to use
might
it
not have.
or anything. So it
And-
might have been a complete surprise to him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
From the look of him in the picture he put up, probably a surprise.
That was one of my absolute favorite Easter eggs of that entire movie because
Absolutely.
if you didn't know what those dots connected, you don't realize that a lot of people don't even know what that movie is. So you have to know it's a movie. You have to realize Stan was in the movie. That I think aside from like one or two like made for TV Incredible Hulk movies, if I remember reading a few months ago when I was doing my cameo research, I think Mallrats was his actual first like theatrical feature
I think so too.
appearance in anything. And he got to play a fictionalized version sort of himself a bit, like a warped version of himself. And to connect those dots and realize, yep, that's the perfect time frame. That is the correct year. He's rehearsing his lines because he got sent the screenplay. Absolutely adorable. And for like the huge Kevin Smith fan that I am, and all this combining, I was like that was it. That was perfect. For
I
me.
was really sad that you were behind me at that moment, and I could not.
I would say I feel bad for the two people sitting next to me because I didn't do anything to distract.
them.
Oh yeah, man. No, I didn't do. But I there were certain moments where like my gesticulation or my initial just like compulsive visceral reaction to some of the song cues or that moment in particular was like,
I am surprised I did not hear more things from behind me that I thought I was going to.
And it just like Josh's reactions and everything bring to mind, like we had talked recently, I think, about like moments in the movie theater we remembered for audience reactions, and that opening logo sequence, like the collective of everybody around you in the theater at that moment was impressive.
Yeah. Somebody, actually, I think it was my coworker who just saw this like her very first comic
Who's
book
Stan
movie.
Lee?
Oh.
Well, she was actually the one. It was funny.
It's like saying who's Gandhi.
Yeah. Like Hannah Montana, you mean? He's a comedian. Can't wait for that movie. No, she was aware of like who he was because like and that's a testament to him. Like he was in the zeitgeist that much and into regular popular culture enough. But I think this might have been. This was definitely her first MCU movie. I actually had legitimately like a teaching session with her. We had like a lunch thing on Friday when she came in. She's like, "All right, you got to tell me all about these things." So I went through like, "All right, here's DC Comics, here's Marvel Comics, here's how the Marvel Comics films got split up between these different."
I wasn't even
companies."
part of this, but it makes me happy just hearing about it.
Oh, this is fun.
I also have to add something to the end of his story when he's done.
Okay, so this is the most fun lunch I've had at work in 5 years, and so oh shit, where were we going with that?
Sorry, I interrupted.
We're talking about Stan, and then the reactions. Crap. Oh, the his cameo moment. We actually posited we're like, she encounters him on the train. He's there. Yes, he was old when they filmed these. Of course, I think they just did like this whole like big string of cameos like a year ago. They tried to do like as many as they could in a very, very short period of time to make sure they could get him. But it was not evident that he was like already on death's door. Like he hadn't been confined to home yet. He wasn't like on his like final downward spiral. In their interaction, there's a moment where the camera goes not necessarily from his view, but he is out of frame. It is looking just at her as she looks at him. I almost wonder if after he passed, they quickly got her back, put her in costume. The look that she gives him seemed a little bit more telling to me. Not just like, hey, old friend, we're sharing a knowing glance. There was something else there to me. And maybe I wanted to read too much into it. I don't know. I could be.
It stood out. That stood out to me too because I was like, that's the most obvious like
I
nod to.
that was like
Stanley.
my automatic reflexive reaction to it, and that's what told me like maybe there's the possibility that, or maybe they edited what they had already shot to make it look that way. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it seemed to me like they had framed that in a specific way knowing that it was going to be released after he had gone.
Can I just put an aside in for Josh because his coworkers seem very great, and I've actually met Shira, his one coworker that did this. So
shout out to Shira.
I have never seen him so aggravated. He got an email it would have been last week that American Eagle was doing this screening on Wednesday night, and that
private
advanced
screening
on Wednesday, and that anybody
got some connections we should know about.
Local theater.
Anybody that was you respond back. It's only open to American Eagle employees. I don't know if it was all corporate or not, but just American Eagle employees.
In the area,
you just had to respond back. He immediately says he responded. Forwards me the email at work and is like, look what just came in. I already responded back. I think I responded back in like 1 minute.
In less than 1 minute, my entry was into the raffle already.
And they were supposed to let them know on Friday, March 1st, his birthday.
My birthday. They're like, entries close at 10 a.m. We'll announce winners that afternoon. So the whole effing day at
all
work.
Friday, he's waiting. And then Friday night, I'm like, you didn't tell me. He goes, they didn't announce it. All weekend.
I got no email.
All weekend. This is at least once each day.
That's your first sign something went wrong.
It was. It was that
foreboding ensued.
So then, was it Sunday night? He checks his email again.
Yes.
And it said something like, "Well, there was an
overwhelming response."
Immediately, he was like, "That's bullshit. None of these people know anything." Because he's like, half of these people probably don't even know. He starts on this whole rant.
I feel like you can tell the people that submitted this contest is like, we don't think people like this stuff.
I became a huge fanboy bitch.
He did. So then
Absolutely.
Monday, he gets, you got to work or something?
No. So Monday goes, Tuesday morning I get in, and Shira says, as soon as I walk in, she got there before me, did you get the new email? Check your email. They released more tickets for the screening, and I initially got the rejection one, but I came in this morning and I got some of the new tickets. I sign in. I'm like, oh, immediately, here we go. Not a damn thing.
I get this text message at work.
Because there was no message in between of, just to let you know, we released more seats and we were able to get more, so we'll try. No. They only told the people who were granted the additional tickets that this even happened. So everyone who got the initial,
to tell people that didn't get the tickets, like, we released more, but you're
you
still shit
lost.
out of luck.
So then he tells me that Shira said that she had even mentioned when she entered, like, she'd never seen a single MCU movie, all this stuff, and then she said to him,
"You don't deserve to go."
Well,
I had all the horrible thoughts.
He did, and then she even was so nice and was like, "I'm really sorry, but I already told my friend about it, and if she didn't already want to go, I'd give you my tickets." And he's like, "Fine."
Meanwhile, you already had tickets for the following night.
Who gives a shit?
How many times do
This
you
is
think
a
I said that?
private advanced screening paid for by someone else. Like, of course everyone wants the novelty of that.
So then,
And though, to her defense, it did turn out like
She get a coin?
The tickets were not
No.
transferable. So like you had to be like an employee plus their guest. So best she could have done is offered to take me, but I'm like, I wouldn't have gone without her.
I would have let you go because of
No,
the bitching and moaning that I heard.
No.
Jeez.
I wouldn't have done it like, oh, you held me back because we have to go together, isn't that right? I mean, no, I wouldn't have done that. So I was like, no. So she couldn't have given me both of them. But then she comes in on Thursday and says, so, yeah, we all went Thursday night, most of us together, and she went the night before on Wednesday. She comes in Thursday and says, yeah, the theater was only like 80% full. And so what I figured was going to happen happened, which was our company had this partnership with Marvel for apparel. And so a message went out to people who knew that. And yes, I'm sure they thought it would be a fun thing, although they have no investment in these at all and no understanding. And then 20% of the people of the tickets they gave out didn't even bother going. And that is bullshit.
And then they also they got free popcorn, and they had like a free candy table set up where people could pick. And they got
Popcorn, I don't care about
posters.
free candy.
We do things well.
But at least Shira was nice and gave us the poster. But yes.
Yes.
So for a week, this is all I heard. And I used the same argument, Brian, of you're going to see it on Thursday.
You have to wait another
You would have
24
been
hours.
just as excited and just as pissed.
If it was,
It's the, like I said, it's the novelty of it.
It's the novelty. I just wasn't as mad as he was.
Fun, different nature of getting to do it. That's all.
So your friend's on board now, right? MCU fan for life?
Well, I gave her the first 6 movies. I gave her Phase 1. And the first thing she says is, "Oh my gosh, well thank you, but okay, so all these movies happened before Captain Marvel?" And I said, "Technically, yes, they do." And then 15 more.
You've got a fourth of what is out there.
Yes. So so through that discussion, she had said like, "Oh, okay." So I recognize some of these other Marvel characters. I think I've seen parts of some of these, and then I had like the whole like list laid out of like chronologically of the MCU releases, and then I kind of used your like modified schedule for the most part, and moved 1 or 2 things around if she wanted a different kind of viewing order. But she's like, "Okay, so there's like 20." I was like, "Yes, this has been 11 years.
Yeah,
you can make that many movies in 11 years." So, but it didn't seem to intimidate her out of.
That's a good sign.
Being curious.
That's a good sign.
Yeah. I'll report back in as we go on. She doesn't seem to be a fast movie watcher.
That's fair.
So,
when you have something that daunting in front of you, it is.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's like at all.
All right, Mike, you got more stuff you want to try to cover?
I just have a couple minor things, and then, like I said, I have the one thing that Josh should exit for.
Ear Muffet.
All right. Muff the auto.
But one of the other things I have here is that I had a lot of fun with the fact that I don't know who made the decision to do it, but taking the open digs at online trolls I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
When the guy asked her to smile, I just about died.
Yes.
I was like,
I actually wanted
a
bit more of a dramatic reaction to that. Not melodramatic, but a bit more to what she did, but I was happy that they did it.
I was happy they did that. I was happy that they used I'm Just a Girl for her, the big fight scene, if you will, at the end. So much that they did there. The only thing I don't necessarily agree with is that doing so acknowledges them in some way, which I'm like, 50-50 on trolling them back versus not acknowledging them at all.
Right.
But I found it fun that they threw those digs in there.
Just to sidetrack real fast, did everybody else really enjoy the Just a Girl moment? Because that was the one that was, for me, was like really on the nose.
I
and
figured
over the
that
top.
was going to be your point of
It was
contention.
a little bit on the nose, but it was still fun.
Like, I think it's maybe just my preference for like theme song music. Like, that was when I wanted a Captain Marvel theme playing, when she just finally starts kicking ass.
Give
And they
her
went for
her
like,
own
yeah.
Yeah, but the
fun
only
thing.
my counter to that is, other than the Avengers, there's not a strong individual character theme that I could tell you anybody else has.
And that's the problem with the MCU as a total. They're always switching up character themes for the same character for each of their sequels.
Because they don't have one.
Right. The
Even
only
if-
identifiable one, you're right, is the Avengers theme.
And
that
even in this,
everybody
you got
seems to
that
know.
like
Well,
that
yeah,
2 seconds where
Spider-Man.
he's typing the document at the end. But even now, and that's one other way that DC beat them to the punch, is a lot of people in this world who like this stuff. The moment that Wonder Woman theme plays, you're like, Wonder Woman,
right,
from the film.
And I
You
think
know
part of that is the moment that it's used. The Avengers theme is played when they're all in the circle and the camera's panning around them. That is a fucking awesome moment.
it's good.
When
It's good
Captain
use.
Marvel finally unleashes and just starts kicking the shit out of people, that is a memorable moment for me. If you played me a really good theme song there, I would remember that.
I was going to say, even if maybe they use the Avengers theme there, because truthfully, that's kind of where the Avengers are actually born, that we
That's
find
kinda-
out at the end of this movie.
That's another comment I made too. The title of Captain America: The First Avenger is kind of a lie now, because Carol Danvers is the first Avenger.
No, she's not.
She has the
World
whole
War
Avenger
II.
initiative came from her name. I consider
the
her to be
Avenger
the
in
first
it, yeah.
Avenger.
But the actual
Inspiration,
first
too.
Yeah.
Well, how,
in existence is still...
Thor.
Mic drop. Mic drop.
We're all wrong, you're right.
Yeah. So for the Just a Girl moment, that's where
How-
I know I'm in the minority,
rather
but
be-
that was
In the moment, I loved it because that is such a power
Yes.
anthem for us. When
It's instantly identifiable.
yeah, and I see where you were getting at with it, but my argument to that was that she was still figuring it out, like at that point, like what she can do, because she was even surprised by the stuff that she was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So she wasn't full on Captain Marvel, like her eyes weren't glowing. She wasn't like
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Because
then
there's parts in that fight where she like goes to do something and she's like, "Whoa, that didn't work," and then
even,
she
like,
does
kinda
other
laugh.
things and she's like, "Oh,
I like
Yeah.
that too. Like she's almost laughing at some point where she's like, and she's like,
When she
"Whoa,
realizes that
that
she's
is
basically
awesome."
invulnerable to blow up anything
Yes,
she
yeah.
wants.
So I
Yeah. I
love that.
I think that it was on the nose,
Yeah.
but I think
But it was fun.
good.
It was really fun. And again, that'd be like if we go again with it being her personal like playlist in
Yeah.
her, it's
Yeah.
it's fitting for her.
And I get that that moment was not aimed at me, so I'm
Yeah.
perfectly fine
Sure.
with me not
Yeah.
agreeing with it. If it worked for you
Yeah.
guys, then
Yeah.
I
more,
can see
all
where
the
you're
better.
coming from with
And like
it,
on the
but
on the one hand,
in
it's
the moment-
actually antithetical to what we talked about before. That there's part of the plot doesn't center around her being
Mm-hmm.
weak because she's a woman. No one's trying to put her down for that. No one's trying to put her in her place because of that,
Yeah.
except the douchebag on the motorcycle, which she
And the
then
pilot.
takes retribution.
And the pilot, like some of the stuff from her.
This is
Earth
true. This is true.
History.
Which is why
but
that
since
song
that's-
would be meaningful
Since it's
to her,
not
yeah.
as much of like a punch through theme in it, you could almost argue that using the song isn't necessarily needed
Yeah.
per se, but it still had an amazing freaking effect. So I don't care.
Right, yeah.
I'll take it. It worked well.
I'm telling you now, you're going to see a dozen recuts of that on YouTube with people putting different songs in it and being like, look, you
I'm
can
down,
do this
yeah.
with this song, that song, the other song, and it's still an awesome scene just because they can't help themselves but do things like that.
Yeah.
And and honestly, you take any battle scene like that, you can do it too.
I feel like there's a lot of, speaking of Hole, there's a lot of other like Hole music or Garbage or Liz Phair. There's a lot of 90s female bands or
I
singers
wish it had
that you could
taken place a
recut.
couple years later,
that
so
you
it
could
could have been
recut
Alanis
that
Morissette
scene or some of that
personally,
stuff.
I think it's the fun aspect of it though, because
True.
No Doubt
Yeah.
was fun and like.
The other thing
Yeah.
is
True.
while
Jump-
you're right, like Liz Phair, are they as recognizable?
Oh no! Yeah, I mean,
As-
not that would be your choice for your
Right,
mass
right.
release, but in terms of like fan recutting, there's a lot that you could use
Yeah.
for female power
Well, yeah.
breakthrough moment.
But
you know?
that one really did it for me though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah.
That was the
I was
moment.
really
Like in
excited.
Wonder Woman, there's the moment when she goes
On
like
her theme.
No Man's Trench.
No Man's
Yeah.
Trench,
But
where
her-
I literally wanted to stand up and be like, "Yes, that was my moment for Captain Marvel."
Yeah, I get that.
You can say whatever you want with Wonder Woman. I'll still argue to the day I'm dead that that theme song is the best part of what they did with Wonder Woman.
I loved. Oh, that was that
It
moment.
was so.
Yeah.
Just every time that music plays, one, you instantly know it's Wonder Woman, and two, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's my
So-
ringtone.
To the fact that the first time you get that music is in BVS.
And
She's
it's-
not a titular character.
Yeah.
They don't have recognizable themes. And coming out of a movie that she's not even really the central character or in the title of,
has the most memorable moment.
Exactly.
In the
Yeah.
movie because of the song. Yeah.
yes. So,
Where do you, wait, Andy, where do you fall in the just a girl moment? I feel like everybody's had their piece of it. Have you chimed in on that?
I think I did, didn't
I
I?
think you did, yeah.
Okay.
Chime in again.
I really liked it.
Okay.
Thought it was awesome.
Hot take by Andy.
Yeah. No, I kind of wanted to jump out of my seat too, like
Okay.
yeah, and then I was like, oh no, wait, I'm in a theater.
That is frowned upon when you're in a theater.
I like too because Gwen Stefani was like this feminist from that
Yes.
time. So like she could be a girl and still like to like wear makeup and be pretty and stuff, but she was still tough too. So I kind of like that aspect of using her as well.
Yeah,
Because that's how I feel like that's how they did with Captain Marvel too. Like she was beautiful, but she wasn't made to be like an object to look at. Like
Yeah.
objectified it anyway.
Yeah,
like
great
no
point.
skimpy outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even whenever she was in like plain clothes, she was in the jeans, t-shirt, big bomber jacket. Like they never like overly sexualized
And
her.
that's the thing that I think, unfortunately, that Wonder Woman
Yes.
could not avoid is that if you want to go the route of using iconic outfits and the classic, like you can't, like you could maybe give her something that had like more like the long pant legging type of outfit that she's had at sometimes, but the design of the character you can't
Yeah.
really get away from that, unfortunately, which then lends it to those sorts of criticisms.
So she
Which
was.
is.
Yeah.
I was going to say, which is a very good reason why this was Captain Marvel and not Miss Marvel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Miss Marvel is 100% a sexualized costume, and Captain Marvel is not.
even just
So-
the shots that I remember. One of the things from Batman vs Superman that made me so angry. And they do it in Avengers somewhat to Scarlett Johansson. Is some of the shots they line up. I'm like, you don't need a full shot of her ass. Like, that's not.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. It's always ass.
It's
front
always
and center
ass.
in
Like,
the middle
no,
of the,
there's no need. Or like hunched over.
Yeah.
They did nothing of that. And
Yeah.
she's in a very tight, form-fitting outfit. So they.
But it also makes sense because it's tactical.
It's tactical.
And they
yeah,
didn't
but
try to
they
modify
still could have
it.
set up shots
Yeah.
the way that they've done in
Yeah.
previous movies that they didn't do, and that made me really happy.
Yeah.
I know. I loved that. I absolutely loved that. And I overstepped that. I loved her friendship. I can't think of her name now. Her friend's name.
Oh my gosh, the daughter's name is Monica. It's
It's Rambo. I never remember.
Yeah,
her.
I can't
Monica,
think
I believe. Or no,
That's the
Monica. I
daughter's
think Monica's
name,
the daughter. I can't think of.
It's another M, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
Megan or something.
At any rate,
Marie.
I mean,
Marie?
is it Marie?
Marie.
I,
Yeah,
I
wanted to
loved their friendship because that
Yes.
just reminded me of like my friendships. You know, these people that I've known forever, and that you're like your support completely, and like they're there for each other, and it's again there for each other, not like you're my best friend, hugs, let's go get brunch. Even though I love brunch,
And,
no, but it was just kind of like more real. It was real.
and
I like
fun
that.
little factoid: at one point in the history of Captain Marvel, I guess it's Marie Rambeau, actually becomes Captain Marvel herself, not Carol.
Related to, sorry, I know there's other points you want to hit, and we want to figure out where we're going to wind down, but
Yeah.
there's one point I want to throw out at the end that I don't know if I'm way off, but I just have
Well, I think-
a weird hunch.
Jumping off what Mike, the name, Marie is the mom, Monica is the daughter.
Yes.
Monica becomes Captain Marvel
It's
later.
Monica that does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So they could be
That's
planting
not
the
where I was
seeds
gonna
for
go,
the
but I got
daughter
something
to
else.
become Captain Marvel somewhere down the line in the future if they want to.
I think okay. That
And also, Marie didn't get shit for going and saving the world, even though she has a daughter.
Yes.
Like, women get shit all the time for doing anything that, like, that's irresponsible, but your husband can go do this or something, or the father can.
Well, they
not,
even
yeah.
she made that point of she was like, I'm not going to go into space. I have you, and she was like, Mom, you were flying planes with
Yeah.
me,
That's
and you were
dangerous,
doing
too.
like you were just doing, and the fact that she was like, the parents came in and they were you could tell they were kind of like, it's late, what's going on? But there was never that scene of like, you're a mother and you need
should
to
feel
be
bad
here.
for trying
Yeah.
to do something heroic.
Does anyone
That's
know
not your
what the
place.
Josh? You might know the Bechdel test for movies.
I do
No.
know what that is. Yes,
It's like for female characters. It's like
It
I
ha-
forget
it has
what
to
the
do with their-
criteria was.
It has to do with the amount of dialogue that they have.
Yeah, and then always
and
like if they
also
refer
the-
to like if every conversation they have is about a man and how they can
Correct.
do something like this,
Oh, okay.
which I feel like this movie, as far as I can remember, passes the Bechdel test.
I'd have to look it up. Yeah, because I know Gina Davis's institute has done a ton of research on representation of women in media, and I wonder if it's even out. Yeah, I haven't seen anything
That'd be
talking about it, but I absolutely
Because like
that
her
would come
dialogue is
out.
all about the mission and what she needs to do for herself and stuff like this. Not worrying about other men and how she is seen to other men and that
And they
kind of
never
stuff. So-
once point out anything about Marie, presumably being a single mother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
She mentions it only in passing about, and not even when she's talking to Carol about how you stood with me when I wanted to do all this as a, and she does have like a passing moment of saying as a mom with a daughter something,
Yeah.
but it is in that framework of saying like you supported me when nobody else did.
Sure.
Yeah,
And that might have just been more expository rather than focusing the point on
Right,
it.
right.
It didn't matter. They're just telling you that's what it is.
Yeah.
So just for the Bechdel-Wallace test is a measure of representation of women in fiction. It asks whether a work features at least two women who talk to each other about something other than a man. The requirement that the two women must be named is sometimes added.
That's awesome.
So yeah, as far as I can remember, I feel like it passes that test.
I believe it does.
Which
yeah.
I think you'd be very surprised to find out how many movies do not pass that test.
It would not be. That's why this one.
Or,
Is,
yeah.
that's what I feel. That's why I was like, I loved everything about. I loved the way that she was just a superhero.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the fact that there was no. Not that I don't like romance or anything, but even Wonder Woman had like the romantic fling
Yeah.
and whatnot, and there was nothing of the sort in this.
And I can play off of that into one of the other points that I had was about how awesome Ben Mendelsohn was.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
he was
Oh, yeah, we
really
didn't get to that
good.
part.
And that's where you get your little bit of romance in the story at all, is him with his wife and children.
Right,
and,
but Captain Marvel herself didn't even.
right. It wasn't necessary for the character. It was
just
100% unnecessary.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. I think that I don't think that was a mistake. I think they were very conscious of not having part of her story rely on that.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
If it has to rely on it, it's
She's got
bullshit.
more important things for her.
I agree.
Did you guys hate that part in Wonder Woman? The fact that there was the little.
I did. I mean, I loved Wonder Woman, but everything that she did was like, aw. Like, I felt like that all the men, like, approached, not you guys, sorry, but, like, in the movie, it was
All
like
men
this.
everywhere.
In the movie, it was just kind of like everything she did, everybody was so shocked. We're like, oh. I don't know.
But I think,
the
like
men
we
in
said,
the
I think
audience
it's
or the
part
men
of
in the
And
story?
the story, too.
That's
Like,
hard to
even-
take like
even
that
Chris
movie as the
Pine.
example, only
And-
because that is the time
The
period
time
that it
period.
is
That was
set.
it. Like I said earlier. They could
But that's why
contextually,
Yeah.
it would be more awkward if people weren't reacting that way.
Right.
It wouldn't seem authentic
But I
because
feel
that's
like-
how people were viewing
Yeah.
the world at the time.
But that's why I didn't get the same, like empowerment from that movie as I did from this one, because that was still such a focal point, focusing on the fact that
Yeah.
it was amazing.
And yeah, and I'm not that it needs defending, but maybe one of the points of that is, look, let's present first in the mainstream art. Remember what it was like, and remember how stupid that was,
Yeah.
and that we want to move away from there. I feel like that's what they were trying.
More of an
maybe show-
example of what not to do.
Yeah, like we can't ignore what it was because it wouldn't make sense if it's supposed to be historical fiction.
Yes.
But just because we're presenting it this way, like that's the point. Is remember why we don't want to be that way anymore.
I can see Leslie's point, though.
Of course.
In that
Yeah.
so many films that are trying to empower women have to point out about how bad things were or are in order to empower them, and say, like, they're fighting against this, and that's why they're having to do this or that, as opposed to just being a woman who's powerful.
And it just, like, I left a little bit, like, pissed off, which, I mean, it was, again, you're supposed to be angry that that's the way that women were treated, or that women were looked at like that. But this one, I just was just like, oh, I wish I could shoot.
Less of a
Thanks for my
reminder of the
hands.
struggle and just purely uplifting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I wasn't angry at all men after this movie.
Not all men listen.
Not all
Hashtag I
men.
really am. I mean it.
Sorry, not sorry.
I left angry at David Thewlis after Wonder Woman. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I live angry
was-
at David Thewlis after a lot of movies. Dragonheart, what a douche.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh, ugh. Sorry.
Next episode of
Big
Bragging and
Lebowski.
Two Friends.
Yeah.
Shitting on David.
But he does good things. But there's a lot of
Well-
movies that I
All right, Mike, bring us back.
Bringing us back around. Okay. So, I'm gonna. I feel like we already talked about the Kree Skrull War a little bit. We mentioned it. We don't really have to worry about whether we're going back there or not. I guess we'll just find out. And the potential for secret invasion is always there, which is the last thing I want to talk about briefly before I send Josh away. And I think we talked about this as potential, where we said, like, now that they've introduced this, the secret invasion can happen. You had a quote from, I don't know if you have that available or not.
I could pull it up on my phone.
Okay, he had a quote from Kevin Feige that I think he's going to bring out.
Oh, I remember you sending that.
mention.
Yeah.
And in said quote, which is, it seems like he's almost ready.
Now, while he's doing it, was this a few years old? Is this from the past, or was this recently, like, as it relates to this? That the quote was
The
given?
quote?
Like, did he make it a few years ago?
You got to ask him.
I think this was being interviewed about Captain Marvel and the Skrulls introduced
okay.
in Captain Marvel. And I think he was flat out like, I can't remember if the question was flat out like, do you think this could lead to secret invasion? Are you setting the seeds for secret invasion? Because, so for anyone that doesn't know what secret invasion is, basically the Skrulls infiltrate the Marvel universe and impersonate heroes. They've captured a whole bunch of them. They make themselves look like them, and they become heroes for years. It's not until somebody dies and turns into a Skrull that you realize they've been here and now it's like who's a Skrull, who's not.
Wasn't part of that the play off of Bill Foster dying in Civil War because the Secret Invasion came right after?
Possibly. I don't remember what hero died, but
I feel like after Bill Foster shrunk back down, like he became a Skrull. I can't remember for certain.
yeah, because you don't know offhand which one of them are and which one of them aren't, not until they die that they retransform into a Skrull, and then so that kicked off a whole other event storyline. Which once you hear the Skrulls are announced in Captain Marvel, it's like, oh, they're laying the seeds and the groundwork for the next big event in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So when they start airdropping in the 90s on Earth, you're like, okay, they're going to be here since then. They're going to show up later. And then you realize by the end of the movie, they're the good guys. They all leave. Wait, what? So I think, after the movie and we get the sort of twist that the Skrulls weren't really the bad guys and they're gone, somebody asked Feige about if the Skrulls could show up later, if they'll have a secret invasion. And Feige said, just like not all humans are bad and not all humans are good, I think Skrulls probably have a variety of moralities amongst them. When they can do what they can do, it probably gets very tempting. So it's fun to have introduced this concept and see where it goes. So he's not denying. He's saying, we probably have a plan. Very vague PC answer.
That's very well crafted, actually. That's a good thought.
And I think
just like most things he does.
For the context,
meaning he knows exactly where they're going to show up, what they're going to do, but he doesn't want to say anything.
Exactly. And I think for the context of Secret Invasion, he has to be that vague.
Yeah.
And I think my response to you is the way I would want to see this is they don't even make mention of the Skrulls for years. Let this go by. Let this get forgotten. Let it be forgotten about Secret Invasion coming. And then maybe at some point, somebody, take whatever character you want, dies and turns into a Skrull. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, shit, how long have they been a Skrull? When did this happen? But I think it has to have that amazing wow moment. Whereas if this happens in, like, Far From Home or something, and it's right there in our face after we just saw it,
like
I'm not going to be pleased.
Like, at least maybe give it all of Phase 4.
I think I told him,
bring it back in.
5 years was the number I used to really have
something like that
pop on oh shit.
Which I feel like whenever if they go in line with what Mike's saying and it just ends and somebody turns into a Skrull, that's your end cap of a movie. I feel like the movie directly after that should be Captain Marvel 2, where she goes off with the Skrulls and you get the explanation of maybe how that group splinters and then they decide to come back to Earth and infiltrate.
Yeah.
Or maybe some of them were still here when this group
Or
left.
that too, yeah.
Yeah,
this doesn't mean like the whole population was on that lab ship.
Maybe a character dies at the end of one of these films, and we just see them like on an autopsy table make the shift as a post-credit scene. I'm for hire, Marvel.
Because
you probably already thought of this, and I'm telling you that.
Just like in the comics, there's a transition for the Skrulls where they start peaceful, they become a warrior-like race. So we haven't seen that transition yet. So I feel like that's something they could do in Captain Marvel 2.
Yeah.
That we see them decide they want to fight back against the Kree. The Kree won't leave them alone, so now they got to do something about it. Somehow Earth gets caught in the crossfire, like we always do, and then we get Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
So Captain Marvel 2 already greenlit?
Not that I know of, but after this weekend, yes.
Yeah, I would say we
don't on the dock because they haven't announced
all we know
anything
for 100% certain
Spider-Man,
is Far
that's
From
only
Home.
because Sony had control.
Everything beyond that is untitled.
I think they have dates announced,
Far
but they won't
From
tell
Home
us what's
and,
in the dates.
Okay. Yeah, Endgame, Far From Home, and Guardians 3 has a script, but not a director,
I
and
still
maybe
say
not
it's
a
going to
cast.
be San Diego Comic-Con this year is when you get either the slate for Phase 4 or at least like the next 3 announcements.
Yeah,
we'll see if do they even have a presence there this year. I don't know. They've been doing.
Something. They're not going. Well, if Far From Home, after Far From Home, first of all, they need to take a little bit of a break.
Yeah,
because you're literally having 2 movies come out in less than 2 months, and then only about 2 months later, you're having a third.
Yeah.
I need a little bit of breathing room. Like the every 6 month mark was good for a while. That's me, but anyway. So depending if people would say because D23 is when's that typically when it happens? It's like in the spring.
I can't remember.
I thought it was like an August thing.
I honestly can't remember. It's definitely between April and September, but I don't know exactly.
Well, so if
I agree, Sarah. I agree.
Somewhere between January
I
and
can't
December,
afford to go.
So my point is, if they, presuming that they don't have not secretly been making another movie that's coming out in November, and it's not going to be till next spring that we get something after Far From Home.
I think they have that date announced as being like next spring after Far From Home.
Sure, and I think that was originally supposed to be. Everyone thought that would be the original date for Guardians 3, but now who knows? But
D23, August 23rd to 25th.
So possibly there. So okay. So if not San Diego, then one of those two events.
It's going to be D20. It's Disney-owned
gotta be
event.
one of
That's going to be there.
Those two, because they, and we talked about this before. Unless they just have a random event announcement press conference thing, there's not really another point where they can make a big official announcement to say, here's what's coming, and we've actually already been working on the one that's like coming up soonest.
Yeah.
You know?
Two things. One, I like the old schedule where we got a spring, a summer, and a fall movie, where every November there was a movie coming.
But that didn't start till 2017. 2017 was the first year that they had 3 movies.
Right. No, but I like that schedule is what I'm saying. And then the last couple years they've pitched the fall winter movie, and we're getting, a March April. I guess what February was Black Panther.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
February, May, summer.
Yeah. We're getting in like a 4-month period or so.
Yeah.
We're getting all our Marvel content as opposed to having it spread more out, which I preferred, because it feels like a really long time in between after you get that summer movie before the next one. So I preferred it being spaced closer together, but I understand what they're going for.
Yeah. But even with 2017, when you had Guardians in May, Spider-Man in July, that felt close together, and then you did get Thor later in November. I really liked 2014, 2016, where you had, I think, Cap in like April, Guardians in August. 2016, you had Civil War in April or May, and then Doctor Strange in November. Like, I'm okay with that. When they put things too close together, it feels...
I agree.
I don't know.
But the other thing I would say is, just once I would love to see Marvel or one of these big companies go the route of surprise everybody, throw the trailer for whatever's coming after Far From Home on Far From Home at the theater opening night.
Okay.
And release it that way. Because that's the way we used to be so surprised.
Josh will have a heart attack.
I'd be pissed. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have my headphones ready.
Well, to me, especially if it's like a major thing, like if it's
I hate you, Marvel.
something where we don't know
I'm
what's
quitting
coming,
after 24.
Like if it's like, oh look, even if they put a trailer, like
to protect
teaser,
Josh, I think all they really need to do is just a title card and a release date.
Yeah.
Anymore, that's all you need. Not even a trailer.
And that's what I mean. Even especially if it's like a major announcement to release it in the theater for people to see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Where if it's like, oh, Guardians 3 coming then, it's like, whatever. But if they threw up something along the lines of like Fantastic Four coming from Marvel, and they threw it in that way where it was
Marvel's
like,
Fan-Forstic.
oh my god, that would be great to see that happen.
Yeah. Well, I know you have a lot left on your list. What else you got?
Well, I was going to start with Sarah. I know you're itching to talk about the cat.
I love the cat.
Is there anything more that you wanted to talk about, Goose? Or
His name is Goose, which made me so happy.
Josh, you get that reference?
I do. I still don't care to see that movie.
So one thing I found out too from the comics.
You've never seen Top Gun?
No.
He refuses
It's
at
on
this
our
point.
list.
WTF?
The cat's name in the comics is Chewie.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I
the
like
other
that too.
wingman.
I like that too.
Also, Goose in the movie was played by 4 cats.
I saw that too. So.
And if Goose is actually a flurkin and not a cat, does she have the right to name it? Because we don't know. Are they sentient enough to name themselves?
Well, obviously, if he cared,
Well, if
He
it
could
cannot
just eat her.
communicate, that's true.
Yeah.
And if it
Not liking
cannot
a name
communicate
somebody
what it
calls
prefers
not
to be
reason
called
to
to
eat
her,
them.
and she assigns a nickname to it just so she can call it something.
Yeah.
Then-
I just the fact that the cat lives at Air Force Base, we'll just call it that, for any Goose. So that I immediately was so excited.
at first I was a little bit like with the CG stuff with him. I'm like, that looks really unnatural. for a minute.
The
but then I was
Zero G
like,
cat was awesome, though.
Yes, yes.
some of the but some of it I'm like, aw, you're a fake cat. But then
You really wanted them
But
to
then-
throw a cat in like the Zero G simulator.
I love
So,
that.
like,
it to have been done a little better.
I actually now I want to see what a real cat does in a Zero G.
I'm pretty sure what is the what is it? Not the ASPCA.
PETA.
Who does
Oh,
the
the
Humane
Society.
Society
Oh,
that they
Humane
tag
stuff.
at the end of every movie that like
Oh yeah,
we
no
were
cats
here
on.
and every animal was safe. Can you imagine if they
Yeah.
went and they're like, we're gonna put the cat in the Zero G simulator? And they'd
I
be like,
feel like it's not really that dangerous for a cat to be in a Zero G simulator if there's somebody in there with it. That's not really
Aren't you causing-
abusing a
I
cat.
feel like you're causing it stress that it won't understand.
It's true. But at any rate,
Funny
I
stress.
I forgave like the little CG stuff whenever you find out that it's Flirkin or whatever it is.
I just like, and I
was
liked
okay,
how
you're
like
an
it,
alien.
it just, and maybe because being a cat owner, just like when she gets in the cockpit and it's like trying to be on her lap.
Oh yeah.
No.
Love that. Yeah.
And yeah, but then the interaction with Fury. I had Flurkin in my head, and that came out.
Flirkin.
Maybe that's why he's so angry. Like I said,
I
it's
think
the
Mark
80s
Andre has
merged
his
DNA. He is
Halloween,
all
has his
blurry now.
Halloween costume
Yeah.
picked out. You can put his hockey jersey on with some cat ears.
And I thought he was in there just enough to like it wasn't overkill.
Yeah.
He was in even just peripheral stuff, and
Oh.
he was in there when he needed to be. You know, he had his point.
And I personally, I felt like it was a great reveal that he actually was a Flurkin.
Yes.
Because it was
Yeah.
completely out of nowhere, and all these tentacles
Yes.
pop on the damn cat, and you're like, what the fuck?
Did anybody else feel like the tentacle scene where he starts like just trashing the few guys was very
Groot-ish.
Groot-esque?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I've seen this. Oh, yep.
It bugged me out a little bit the way the tentacles looked, because they looked very reminiscent of like the what were they, the Ouroboros zombies in Resident Evil 5.
Oh yeah.
It definitely had a feel like that to it, where it just like fucked with my head.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
I'm not going to remember which one, but there's a whole thing where they're running from.
The
Yeah,
Rathars.
it's the-
Yes,
yeah,
and they're
Rathars.
and they get
Sounds like
loose.
aliens.
It's a similar kind of scene where it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
down a hallway.
Yeah.
Is there a similar shot where you just see like tentacles?
I think they're just
Yeah,
round the
there
corner
are,
and all
yeah.
you see is the tentacles across the
Yeah.
intersection. Yeah.
The other scene that reminded me of another movie was actually when they were flying through the Grand Canyon.
Independence
Oh,
Day.
yeah.
All I could
Yes.
think of was Will
Independence
Smith.
Day.
Yeah.
Yes.
I turned to Eric and I
It's the
told
same
him
thing.
that
It's like
exact thing.
It's like a real plane versus an alien plane.
Right, yeah.
I was like, that was their homage to Independence Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Goose the cat is my favorite.
So follow-up
More
question:
Goose. Hashtag more Goose.
where do you think Goose is now? Is he just Shield mascot?
I was
Well,
wondering. that,
Like
'cause
he
we
doesn't
don't-
show up in any other movies that
Right.
take place after this. So where
Well,
does
we also don't
Rip
know.
Goose.
With her. For
We
what
don't
can
know if
tell.
because he's a Flurkin, how long of a lifespan does he have?
True.
Is
Oh,
he
that's
typical
true.
cat
Yeah.
lifespan? Because now depending on how old he was when she had him in. It's already been what, like they said, 6? Was it 6 years? 5 years.
6 years.
6 years.
Like on
Yeah.
my six,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and then how long he is. So we're like, does a Flurkin? Does he have a different lifespan?
Does a Flurkin have the ability to do what Skrulls do?
True.
Could Goose actually not be Goose and be just a Flurkin
A
that is
question.
imitating
They
Goose?
they were the ones who knew what he was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they,
so you're
they
saying
recognized him
Yeah.
right away.
Is it a cat-like creature, or is it just another creature that can
Imitate a
Imitate.
cat.
imitate?
Yeah.
I googled it this morning at breakfast. And I don't remember a lot, but it did say it was a cat-like creature.
Oh, Flurkins are
They
okay.
are.
So they're
Cat-like
actually
creature.
in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, apparently so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't aware. I didn't look it up. I just
We saw a lot of its powers, but the one power that it listed that we didn't get to see is, I guess, whatever it ingests puts it into another dimension.
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's like, and then I guess there's ways to do interdimensional travel through them. Although they said that
Integral
was
to
gross.
Endgame. I'm calling
Yes.
it.
So
kind of like Lockjaw.
I don't know.
The other thing I'm hoping is
It's a
if-
big teleporting
if,
dog from
if Flurkins
humans.
have a different
I know who.
lifespan
Okay.
than
Yeah,
a
I know who
typical
Lockjaw is,
cat.
but I don't know if it's the same.
Gotcha.
Like
Sort
in
of.
Winter Soldier when Fury is in Cap's apartment and he's talking about like my wife threw me out and stuff. So you're thinking, you're like, because we don't really know that much about Fury, about where does he live, what's his home life. I really hope that Goose is just his house cat that he sometimes takes to the office when he wants to be there, and that as a Flurkin he has a really long life, and like Captain Marvel gets to. She'll be like, well, who's feeding Goose? And they're like, who's Goose? She's like, where's Fury's house? I need to go make sure he's okay.
Yeah.
The only other points I had were that I alluded to, I think, in our opening was I was really happy that I was surprised that Jude Law was the dickhead.
Yeah.
And Ben Mendelsohn was not the dickhead for once.
That was on my surprise
Very
list.
much a reversal for the two of them.
Because I think I don't know if they did it on purpose, but maybe we all read into it ourselves. But given Ben Mendelsohn's roles recently in the last couple of movies, and it's freaking Jude Law.
Yeah.
So you expected him to probably be Marvel.
Dumbledore's not bad.
Right. Yeah.
and
Watson.
My whole brain was like, no.
Dumbledore, Watson.
Yeah, like you expect him to probably end up being Marvel if
Yeah.
anybody else. He's gonna here's your mentor character, like the Ancient One, and like some of the other characters that they've set up in the other movies.
Right.
So he'll probably be the one you get a beginning story with, maybe some bad befalls him. Captain Carol carries on from there, etc. The whole head fake with what the representation that Annette Bening was giving you, I absolutely loved that she was both simultaneously this projection of her consciousness, given what the Kree used that for,
Right.
That tool for, as well as actually being this, captain, leader, and brilliant and brilliant person, this scientist, this, everything else. I was very happy when I heard she was going to be involved. I thought it was going to be. I wouldn't say like Glenn Close was not in Guardians all that much.
Right.
She does not have that much screen time.
Yeah.
Annette Bening doesn't have a ton, but the integral nature of her character. And she had a little bit more screen time, I'd say, in aggregate.
Yeah.
I was happy to see
definitely.
that because I thought it would be like she's here and gone for a scene.
Yeah.
They did a good job of keeping that under wraps.
Yeah.
It was everybody's assumption up until the movie released that Jude Law was going to be Marvel. And
that probably Ben Mendelsohn would be the villain, basically.
Well, yeah.
And he'd be your big bad in some way.
You cast Ben Mendelsohn right now, and it's assumed he's a villain. And honestly, I feel like they may have even chose Jude Law because he looks a bit like the comic drawing of Marvel to begin with.
No, does he?
So I think that, kind of fit that assumption. And turning the table on it when, they first call him whatever the hell they call him.
Young Wrong.
Yes. You did, but it's
basically
okay.
I said two syllables that ended in a G, and we're taking that as correct.
You realize he's not,
Sound like
the
the
first thing
Martians
you
from
realize is
Mars
that, like,
Attacks.
it's in that first scene when he's training her and she uses the blast on him that you realize, oh, he's not Marvel, so that's going to change what my perspective on how this movie would go is going to be.
See, knowing nothing about
until they revealed that
that
later in
threw
the
me
movie that Annette Bening was playing Marvel, I didn't think they were actually going to use the character at all, and I was like, how are they going to end up with her being Captain Marvel if they don't use Marvel?
Sure.
I'm waiting to see how many internet trolls get pissed about that too, because Marvel's a man and they made her a woman in this one.
They're out there already.
Oh yeah, but it's just more ammo for them to get pissed about.
Yeah, it's like
Which not that I would use it as a way to counter them, but in theory, is Annette Bening's character a woman?
Yeah, well,
If she's a Skrull
yeah, we don't know.
impersonating a human on Earth as a Skrull,
Well,
She wasn't a
she's
Skrull.
Kree.
Yeah,
she's Kree, so she is a woman.
that is very true. That's very true. I was thinking Skrull. Sorry,
But they do
Mixed up
throw
my
the
races.
reversal there in that, and it's important to note that Carol does not get her powers from Marvel in this instance.
Right.
She gets it from an engine made from the
Marvel's work.
Tesseract and her work, and it works a lot better in terms of the Marvel Universe. And I think that's something important to point out, is that many of the Kree had similar powers to Captain Marvel, but were not as powerful as he was in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates a bit of an issue if you want to have the Kree playing these bad guys, to have them all nearly as powerful as Carol ends up being afterwards. Not quite, like, again, she was still more powerful than they were, but it was always assumed if the humans tangled with the Kree, they were fucked. And it's very, very good for the Marvel Universe that they didn't power the Kree that heavily, which it just creates a problem story-wise to have them that strong.
The last thing I have about the movie, I think, that we haven't touched yet is if a possible prediction is, and I'll leave in a minute so you can go for your last thing if you want. I still have an endgame prediction that Tony Stark dies. And in his place, if they want to carry on the Iron Man moniker, that either Shuri picks it up, or with some of the personality and character traits that they showed in Monica in this movie, she would now be almost 25 years older.
Okay, yeah.
Once Endgame is happening, that maybe they don't do it immediately after Endgame, but maybe a movie or two later, something might. I don't know. Just there's something about where
at there. I think Shuri is just so much better set up to take that role.
Quite true, but there was something about Monica. I was like, maybe they give us a.
I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. If you want to do that, I will extricate myself.
Yeah. It won't take long to discuss.
I got some more stuff for you, Josh, too. In case.
Oh no! All right. Do you want to hit do lightning round on that,
yeah.
and then I'll go.
Well, just kind of like I want to talk about surprises. Like we talked about, the role reversal with the Krees and the Skrulls surprised me. Having Annette Bening be Marvel was surprising for me. Carol getting her powers from the Tesseract was surprising to me. Are there any other surprises for anybody else that we want to touch on that we didn't talk about?
Story-wise, there was there was very little about Ms. Marvel that I knew anyway. So if they had changed up anything for the sake of creative control or anything, it didn't.
Okay.
It wasn't apparent to me.
Anybody else? Nothing.
For me, I would say it was a minor surprise, but I was very happy they went with at the very end when she's staring down Ronan, they did not shy away from her full-on mohawk at that point. Like, it was small throughout the rest of the film. She gets fully powered, and it just goes.
I love that mohawk.
Yeah.
Crazy, and I was like, thank you for not shying away from something like that.
Right.
Because it's a really strange design choice they made initially that really worked for the character, and it looked good on the drawn page, and you have to wonder what it's going to look like in a live action version. It looked awesome. I'm glad they went with it.
And even to that point, there were many times where they took the opportunity to show your lead actor's face and have the, let's be honest, attractive face of Brie Larson visible, but in those closing moments, to take that person and cover them up. And so, one of the last things we want you to see is not the face of our star, not this, young attractive person. We're putting this mask on her, and she's stylized, and she's zooming into space.
Yeah, I mean, they could have gone a different route, but she still is in space, and I think that's part of the reason that you see it that way.
Potentially, I think by the end of the movie, I could buy that she's nearly powerful enough and she just do whatever the hell she needs to do. So if she didn't have a space mask, I wouldn't have thought there's a plot hole.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just an observation.
We talked quickly about Mendelsohn. Anything else we want to talk about for his character? I don't know if we really dove into that one or not.
The only thing for me was I did not legitimately. I've seen this guy in 6 or 7 movies now. I did not know he was Australian. That is his real voice.
I didn't know that either.
Like the voice you see in Batman, in Rogue One, it almost sounds more like an affected British accent of some kind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I mentioned in previous stuff about Captain Marvel when we talked about production and stuff like that. The writers and directors of this movie, the co-directors of this movie, also co-wrote along with some others, Captain Marvel. They previously made a movie called Mississippi Grind, I've mentioned.
Yeah.
With Mendelsohn and Ryan Reynolds. Mendelsohn has a straight-out, 100% believable American accent. Did not know that. I almost thought he was putting on an accent as a Skrull. Like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
the voice he's chosen now that he's this, like, alien form that he really is. No, that's the dude through a voice. Didn't know that.
Fair enough. I was actually surprised he lived. I thought they were going to die. Or at least he was going to die. He gets shot, which they never mention
set up that
again.
way.
I reacted
there-
really strongly when he got shot.
I
Yeah,
did
there
too.
was a collective gasp in the
Yeah.
movie theater.
So I don't
And
know
I
if
was like, yeah.
like I wonder if that was shot and tested with him dying, and then the audience just threw a fit. So they're like, "Oh, let's just recut that. That's fine."
It would have lost me. I would have been so pissed off.
They gave
Yeah.
everyone the
I would've
buzzers.
been
Do you
angry.
like this? Do you not? Like, where's the bullshit button?
Yeah. I imagine that's how the screening was. And I think we sort of touched on it, but assuming this movie gets a proper sequel, any or unless I don't know what you touch on, but if it bleeds into just predictions for a sequel or
It does not.
okay, any predictions or theories for sequel or leading into Endgame now that we've seen Captain Marvel?
I would predict further encounters with Ronan.
In a sequel like Captain Marvel 2?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a
I
safe
think
bet.
that's coming, and I don't like it personally because we know how Ronan ends already. That's the only reason I don't like that. Is just
You know where
there's
it's gonna
other
go,
villains
so why
out there
fill
they
it
could
in?
have pulled for this instead of Ronan,
Yeah.
and we know what's going to happen. So
Sarah, Leslie, anything you'd like to see in a sequel? Nothing specific? No?
Nothing specific. I'm just
Okay.
happy.
Yeah, I think that's all I have, Mike. So if you want to close this
Sure.
down with whatever.
yeah,
Well, Josh has to leave.
Yeah, Josh needs to
You should go
sequester himself.
go in the basement. I'll go get you when we're done.
This is not going to take that long. This
You're
is,
banished to the
this will be
basement.
brief.
Go in the basement.
Cone of shame.
I also
Oh, I
like
guess
how
that's
my own little Flurkin has taken up residence on Brian's
Apparently,
lap.
yes.
I took a picture.
So I'm going to assume Josh is out of earshot
I know.
by now. So the one thing, you guys are okay with the spoilers and trailers
Yes.
and everything. Okay.
I haven't watched the latest
I
Endgame
haven't
trailer,
watched
but
the latest, but you've seen one at least.
I've seen one.
Okay, so then you've seen what I'm going to talk about, which is Tony being stranded on a ship in space,
Yes.
running out of resources, withering away and dying. My assumption previously was that Captain Marvel, en route to Earth, would encounter him, save him, bring him back. I just assumed that because we knew she had what was going to happen. We know that going into Endgame, obviously Tony has to make it back at some point. There is one tragic storyline where he stays in space and leaves a memoir of some kind that they could play out, but that seems very unlikely to be a storyline they would follow for him just not making it back. So who do we have left to collect Tony, if you will, and return to Earth with him?
Silver Surfer.
No. We have
Aww.
we have Valkyrie and the Asgardians that were on their way to Earth anyways to collect him, and I think this would be like my prediction moment. So half the Asgardians are still out there. After
There were
the-
2 ships.
Well, yeah, it was. Thor pointedly says half of his people were taken out. We never see an end for the Valkyrie.
That's true. We don't.
We never see an end for Korg. We never see them on that ship.
So are you just completely ruling out that Captain Marvel's not picking up Tony at all?
I think the end credit scene, her showing up without him.
Doesn't mean she can't go back out to space to get him.
Because she did just go, "Where's Fury?"
Yeah.
Got
Or,
found this
or maybe
alone in
Tony
space.
was,
What's happening?
not as fast as she was getting into the building after she brought the ship.
There's nothing that says once she gets to Earth, she's going to stay on Earth.
Perhaps, but I think we need some connective tissue, like something there that's already there, and I think that's a good connection. And I don't care. It needs to happen because I need to see Tony have a conversation with Korg.
Yeah.
I'd
I'd love for that too.
and that moment, I think, is something that they probably want, and maybe they'll give it a go. I think that would be my
good.
prediction. Is now, since Captain Marvel stays out of the picture because she's come to Earth, they don't even know where Tony is. They have no idea.
Yeah.
So she's come to Earth and she's here already. She's here for the fight. Tony's not there, obviously. I'd say the Asgardians are what's left to pick Tony up.
Okay.
And I just wanted to hear what anybody else thought about that. Is a possibility as any.
I mean, I could see it. I still wouldn't rule out Captain Marvel picking him up, though. So I could go either way.
Fair
I don't
enough.
know.
And
I don't have strong feelings on that because I didn't think about it.
the only other thing I wrote down. This is Josh could be here for this, so
Just go. We're way over as it is.
okay. Just briefly, we had talked right after the movie about destroying the stones
Yeah.
and how that could happen. And I just kind of made myself a quick list, and the only one I can come up with that nobody has enough connection to maybe be able to destroy is the Reality Stone. Because Gamora is in the Soul Stone potentially. She, something going on there with Gamora and the Soul Stone.
Yeah.
The Scarlet Witch we've seen can destroy the Mind Stone. Captain Marvel now has a heavy connection to the Space Stone.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange has a close connection to the Time Stone at this point. And Star-Lord was able to wield the power of the Power Stone even for a brief time. So he has enough connection to it that I'd say, maybe. But the Reality Stone, other than Jane, who is not coming back, as far as we know, unless they ninja got Natalie Portman to come back in.
Yeah, she's not coming back.
Was the only one with that connection to the Reality Stone that's left alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe they need to figure out how to take that one down. I don't know. Maybe if they're going to go that route, I think it's there. I think that's a possibility for how things could wrap up.
Yeah. Yeah, because we were trying to theorize now that she's part of the Tesseract if she can destroy the Tesseract.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well... And this is also assuming they're trying to destroy the stones by the end of the movie.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It just is a theory.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get to all this probably again whenever we do some sort of prediction episode and try to do it. But all right, so we've gone way over as it is, so we're just gonna wind it down. Normally we try to do ratings. I'm not even gonna worry about the ratings right now. We'll worry about ratings another time whenever we do our list or something. So if you've enjoyed the show, please stop by iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Be sure to share, subscribe, favorite the show. You can find us on Facebook. Search Bry Guy Super Friends. Go to facebook.com/Bry Guy Super Friends. You can send us questions, comments, topic suggestions. You can email us, which I don't check, bryguysuperfriends@gmail.com. Or you can tweet us at BGSuperFriends on Twitter. That I will check. On behalf of Andy, Josh, Leslie, Mike, Sarah, and myself, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.